Looking at now is a live shot from Skyfox. So these are people that are now, they have to be on the move, and the skirmish line there will keep them from going into, I believe, Chinatown, north of where they are right now. And they'll have to keep moving and get out of the curfew zone. Now, will these people obey the curfew? That's the next question.
Well, you know, we haven't been given a lot of notice about the curfew. It was announced just this evening at our 5 o'clock hour. I'm sure word is getting out to those who are in the know about what's going on, and they're well aware of this. But also does give police the authority to make those arrests for people who are violating that curfew, who are in that area, who don't live there, who don't work there, who have no business to be in that zone tonight. Obviously, we've seen unrest. LAPD making more than 100 arrests today alone. Protesters tried to get, well, they were on the freeway for about 10 minutes. CHP shut that down quickly, but the mayor saying at that news conference with the chief of police that tonight this curfew would go into effect. And they also talked about the businesses that had seen some damage. And so that's not going to happen tonight. Obviously, you see people there, but past history tells me that the LAPD gives people some time to make that happen, to get out of the way and to clear those streets.
So at this point, because we are so new to this curfew, the announcement was just made a couple of hours ago. You can't really expect people on the ground that have been at a vigil or demonstrating outside of the federal building to know precisely that they are now in an illegal zone because of the curfew. But let us be sure, LAPD will inform them, and just like there have been orders to disperse, now there will be orders to disperse that are emboldened by or strengthened by the fact that now there is this curfew in the downtown area.
And we should note, just around 6 o'clock, they had a rally, a vigil, a prayer vigil with religious leaders of various churches and locations coming together. The mayor was there. A crowd was there. I'm sure the announcement was made very clearly for those who were protesting peacefully against the ICE operations in Southern California that this curfew is going to be in effect.
Well, can we bring in Laura Diaz, because she was there? Let's see if they really did make some kind of announcement or advice on what to do once the curfew time hit. Is Laura Diaz available? Okay, so we're still watching then while we wait for Laura to get to us.
But think about this. If you drove to that prayer vigil and you got in place for this 6 o'clock event type of thing, and it might take you some time to walk to your car, to get to your car, to get out of the area.
Absolutely.
It was a big event that was pre-planned. It was with a lot of religious leaders speaking on the microphone. Right there, that is the federal building there. And you can see the National Guard members who are standing underneath the awning there, so to speak, of the building. But look at all of the LAPD cars that are there as well.
All right, we had a little bit of a technical glitch with Laura, but she's back with us. And so, Laura, we were wondering whether or not in that prayer vigil, whether those religious leaders and all the other participants, if they did announce the fact that the city had announced a curfew for 8 p.m.
Well, not while I was there, Susan and Christine. While I was there, I did not hear that announcement made, but we were not there at the top of that program, so it's possible that it happened before we arrived. I can tell you this, that it was a beautiful service there at Grant Park. The reason we're standing in front of the detention center is because those who wished made the trek from Grant Park over here, and I was surprised at how many of them decided to do that, because there were, you know, some families there who came with young kids, and they made the walk as well. I also think that there are other people here who had nothing to do with that prayer vigil earlier. But let's tell you about that incident. So sorry, I was getting an emergency. We're in the video now. I was getting an emergency alert on my phone. So this was what it was like earlier today. There were probably about 600 people in the park. They were sitting in the grass. They were listening to the mayor and to other clergy, including a Catholic priest and a rabbi, and it was a really wonderful feeling inside of that park. And a lot of people said that they felt compelled to show up there because of what they were seeing on television, all the images of the violence and some of the reckless things that were happening. They wanted to be the antidote to that. So I think that people who were at the park felt really held together and part of something bigger than themselves. And I had the opportunity to speak to one woman about why she was there. Let's listen.
So I feel that right now is the most important time to have unity and to have love. I feel like there's so much hatred right now in the world, and it is important to represent the people that are coming here, uniting together, and there's one common goal. It's just love.
So coming back here live, most of the crowd is leaving the area. So they clearly know about the 8 o'clock curfew. They're making an attempt to get back to their cars or public transit, whatever they use to get here. I was a little concerned when I looked around and saw some people that I recognized from last night who were not obeying the law. We certainly don't want to have a repeat of last night. Certain areas of downtown where you saw businesses really had horrible graffiti and windows broken and just all kinds of lawlessness, hoping not to have a repeat of that tonight. And I'm sorry I stopped at the beginning of the live shot, but that's because my emergency alert on the phone was telling me that the curfew was in place and I couldn't hear a thing, so that's what happened. But right now, most people are making an attempt to get out. Can we swing around? We can see that the equestrian group of the LAPD is arriving, which says they're going to be moving people along. They're going to maintain that curfew, and this is how they do it. We're seeing this first night of the curfew starting right here in downtown. I'm sure that most of the families that I saw earlier are pretty close to being back to their cars. But these are other people who've been staying in downtown later in the night, and that's when we've had some of the problems that we've been recording for you here on Fox 11. But right now, you can see a concerted effort by the LAPD to get people out of the area and to get them to safety and to impose that curfew until things settle down in the city of LA. Laura Diaz reporting live from downtown, sending it back to the studio.
Laura, you can see with all this movement that LAPD is taking this very seriously. Of course they are. And moving into place to make sure that the protesters and all the people downtown that don't belong there need to move along. Now, the mayor also made a point, I think it was actually Chief McDonald who made the point, that if you are experiencing homelessness, that you are allowed to stay in the curfew zone, and if you are a member of the news media. Now, I'm wondering, because I saw a couple of times on other news channels where the reporter had to keep explaining, no, we're press, we're press. Have you had any kind of interaction like that? Was there any time, a point where they weren't quite hearing you when you said, I work for Fox 11 News?
No, I've had no problems. They've been very even-handed with us. We've been allowed to record the news as we always do. I mean, last night when things got really hairy, they were moving us out for our own safety. But other than that, people have been respectful. They honor the profession and they allow us to do our work. But right now, as you can see right at this corner of Temple and Los Angeles Street, we have some people who are slow to leave, and others, I'm going to presume they were the ones who were at that prayer vigil earlier, and you know, they're law-abiding, they wanted to do the right thing, so they've left the area. So I think the people who are still here had nothing to do with that event that we were covering at the park. I think this is a different group.
Laura,
and they showed up here because they saw activity.
Yeah, we should note the picture on the left box is that overpass of the 101 that we saw that was taken over by the crowd. They were throwing the rocks onto the CHP vehicles below. Law enforcement well in control of that overpass, well in control of that access to the 101 freeway or not.
That is the 101 freeway. I don't think that is near the 101 freeway. I think that's closer to the federal building. You're talking about the larger screen?
No, the smaller box.
The smaller box.
Not that shot there, not that one, the one we had before.
Okay. Well, they were blocking an entryway to the 101 freeway, so I beg your pardon.
No worries, no worries.
But on the other side is the LA Mall. So anyone who's been downtown and you know the LA Mall, that is subterranean, and it is near City Hall East and near the court system, et cetera. That's where sometimes people go to have lunch if you're on jury duty or what have you. But I find it really remarkable that we're seeing the policemen, the police officers there, and they already have their less than lethal rifles drawn. And so they mean business. They're going to make.
Well, think about it. Anybody here who's not moving is not wanting to be part of the acknowledgement of that curfew. Anybody else who is well aware of it and doesn't want to be caught up in it is probably, like Laura said, in their car making their way out, and LAPD will accommodate that. But quite a show there where you have those equestrian units, quite a show of police vehicles. But it sounded like the mayor was very serious at her news conference today. The police chief, very serious. They were not going to take another night of lawlessness in this downtown area.
It was one thing when there was the graffiti. That was very sad for the mayor because, of course, she wants this city to shine when we are hosting these big events upcoming, the Olympics, the World Cup. But after 23 businesses were damaged and looted, that was just the line in the sand. We cannot have this happen again. We cannot have another night of that. And when you have so many people converge on a small area, there's only so much police can do. Okay, police on the move now, pushing along a few people. There aren't that many people. And by the way, we love the mounted units only because we love horses, but the horses are very persuasive. You might be able to go toe-to-toe with an officer with a riot stick, but it's a lot harder when you've got a 2,000-pound beast, or however. Yeah. Christina Gonzalez would know better than I how much a horse weighs.
Let's go back to Laura Diaz, if we can, there on the ground. Laura, you are outside the federal building where it seems to me that police are tightening up that area right now, really trying to take control of that area with a clear sign to those people that you see backing up right now.
Yeah, you can see that there's a scrimmage line that's been formed on the other side. When we had the camera whipped around before and we were showing you the mounted unit, that's the other side. So they're now walking toward us, and I presume they're trying to get the last. Okay, they want us to move. We got to move.
All right, we'll take it back here. Obviously, Laura, a member of the media as well, but when the police come in like this and they are clearing the area, that means us as well.
Yeah.
It is.
They'll start directing you to an area that you need to go. If they don't want you there, we have a right to be there as members of the media, but they can tell you, instead of here, please go over there.
And again, that is the area where we saw the National Guard there and Homeland Security there. Obviously, the LAPD wanting to make a statement about that specific area to start, for sure. That's where our camera is, and we are seeing overhead. But they're really wanting to make a statement, Susan, about that area with the federal building, and perhaps that is a sign that they want no damage in that area, nobody being unruly in that area, and making a stand right there.
Well, particularly because a lot of what we see, a lot of the optics, especially around the federal building, that informs what kinds of sentiment we're getting out of the president or Speaker Johnson or, you know, anyone that is justifying the orders that ICE and Border Patrol, whatever, have issued, or specifically the Trump administration, in terms of like fortifying law enforcement around federal buildings.
So it happened around 6 o'clock, give or take, right before 6 o'clock, that the mayor's news conference happened. LA Mayor Karen Bass declaring a local emergency with that curfew for tonight. And a reminder to anybody who's watching from other parts of the country, who is watching from other parts of the world, other cities. If you do know LA or you don't know LA, it's a pretty small area that they have this curfew. Everybody else can go about their business. If you're in Santa Monica, you're in Whittier, you're in Anaheim, you're in Burbank, Newport, you're living your life necessarily.
Right.
This right here, it borders this downtown pocket of the 5 freeway, the 110, the 10, and where the 110 and 5 merge. So it is just a pocket of downtown LA in which they're saying, not tonight, people.
And really, when you think about it, what areas were affected by the protest is even much smaller than that. It's much smaller than when we see the map of the curfew zone, which extends all the way north past Chinatown. We didn't really see very much in the way of Chinatown. The closest we came was that reckless driver that drove. That guy got out of there as well. So you see the borders, you see how it's all bordered by freeways, and that was on purpose. The mayor said that's the way Los Angeles sees the areas around Southern California, bordered by freeways. And so you know the 110 slot between the 101 and the 5. So you know that's closed. You know that the Interstate 5 down to the 10, that is the border. That's the eastern border that is closing off that zone. But it's a huge, she says it's 1 square mile, but it looks really big. And if you then consider, if we were able to zoom into exactly where the protests have been, it's a smaller portion still of this where the curfew zone is.
Well, bottom line, we saw some lawlessness last night, destruction of businesses. You've seen all of the graffiti that's been left behind. If I'm in business in that area, I may be welcoming the curfew just to bring some calm, but also that means a loss of business. And for people who don't know downtown LA, it's really been built up over the years.
Absolutely.
With wonderful restaurants and hotels and crypto.com.
There's an entertainment zone now, whereas 10 years ago or so, it wasn't so big as it is now.
Right.
You got crypto.com, LA Live, not LA Live Now. That's this.
It's one of those locations that, you go on a Friday night to go out to dinner or to an event downtown. There's the garment
BET Awards were downtown yesterday.
City Hall, your LAPD headquarters. Your heart of government is right there. But for the most part, if you're living in anywhere else, any other spots of Los Angeles, you're not directly affected by this. You're not under a curfew if you're in Woodland Hills or Calabasas or Irvine or Marina del Rey.
And I guarantee you, everyone that lives in the city of Los Angeles or even nearby the city of Los Angeles, they've gotten text messages from people from across the country going, "Are you okay?"
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And when in fact it's like, just today I got a text message from somebody in Hawaii who says, "How's your neighborhood?" And I go, very far away from this area that's impacted by the protests. Don't worry. It's just not, the world sees it as a whole area, this whole city of LA, when it's not.
But that's true with any breaking news, and you see something happening in Dallas. Do you reach out to your friends in Dallas? I often do. How are you doing? Checking on you, because not only does it maybe not affect you physically, it might affect you emotionally, and people know that we work in the business, so they probably assume you and I are coming to work, you and I are in the midst of this, you and I are dealing with this, and you and I can provide information. But I'm wondering, to our viewers, if you also have gotten a message from family or friends who they live away from LA, they live in another location, and they want to check on you, because emotionally, this affects all of us, because we're all watching. We know the ICE operations are not over. And for families that are being directly affected by the ICE operations, it's a very painful time. But on a greater issue, we're looking at this politically. We're looking at this with our local government and our national government. And it affects us in LA, but it also affects the nation.
Absolutely. In fact, the mayor called it an experiment, that she said that she believes that this is the Trump administration's experiment. If we can take the second largest city and take control of it, the second largest city in the nation, then we can do it elsewhere. So that was her assertion. We don't know if there is any credibility to that opinion, but she believes that it is some kind of experiment. Of course, we know that there's no love lost between the governor and the president, so perhaps that's why There's such an aggressive, or seemingly an aggressive, actions by ICE. We do know that there have been raids today in various locations around Southern California. So despite the protestations, despite the demonstrations and the protests, it's not stopping ICE. Excuse me. It's not stopping ICE from doing what they came here to do, which is to round up undocumented. Now, you can take issue with the way they're doing it, because apparently what's getting caught up are not just people that are violent criminals with police records, but also people that are just trying to work and feed their family.
Well, as we are watching this here, obviously the LAPD there is very prepared to deal with this crowd here. And some are going to say they're press, and in this day and age where there's so much social media press, I'm wondering who gets to stay, who doesn't get to stay. It seems everybody with a cell phone seems to be a commentator, seems to be press. I'm sure that you have to have some kind of credential to consider yourself press and to stay.
Christine, we're going to move on. We're going to find out what Ed Laskos is up to, because there's more reaction to ongoing ICE raids in other places, protests, and now military moving into Southern California. Some Orange County leaders are opposed to President Trump's order to send in more National Guard troops, and they have a message to local and federal law enforcement. Let's go live to Fox 11's Ed Laskos. He's in Santa Ana in Orange County with the latest there, and we saw what happened last night, Ed. Is there a curfew down there?
No curfew down here at all, Susan, but let's get right into it. Joe will give you a look. That is just some vehicles moving in from Homeland Security, some of the immigration officers, and what you have then is a long line of the National Guard members cutting a gauntlet through the protesters to escort those vehicles out. But we're right here in the Civic Center Plaza where all of this exploded last night, as you were saying, Susan. A lot of remnants all over Santa Ana Boulevard here of some of the rubber bullets and other projectiles that all happened. You can see some of the roadways. Joe gives you a look, all marked up here. This is where they had the tear gas flying last night when the protests, some 200 strong, couple hundred strong, protested, and as nightfall came, it erupted into violence and face-to-face confrontation with law enforcement. That's a long line there of, if you can see them, Santa Ana police and some of the National Guard members escorting some of those vehicles right across the path of the protesters down there as they're lined up. Several dozen protesters in this area right in front of the federal building here of the Civic Center Plaza. That's over to the right-hand side. Joe will give you a look at that. And all you have in front of the federal building, as you can imagine is National Guard members, and they're protecting this building, the Immigration Center. It's just down the block from the Ronald Reagan Federal Courthouse, another target of the protesters last night where all of this unfolded. Talking about what happened last night, let's get to that video. Wild scene here. They had arrests, dozens of arrests after a face-to-face confrontation. The tear gas in the air, the rubber bullets, the fireworks being thrown, as we're told, and other projectiles from the demonstrators at the line of police. All of this as that protest unwinded through the day, and then as the evening came, it just erupted into violence, so much so there was a press conference here a little while ago, a couple of hours ago actually, law enforcement, but also the local lawmakers, county supervisors, saying if you want this violence to end, and we all do, as one of the supervisors was saying, the best way to have it end is to take all the military, all the National Guard members, all the U.S. Marines, and we haven't seen any Marines deployed in this area yet, but the supervisor saying get the military out of Santa Ana. Listen to some of this.
This morning we heard from our district attorney, and we agree that law enforcement needs to show the same restraint that we are asking of the public. We don't want to see any excessive force or civil rights violations by our law enforcement agency at any level. To the federal administration, we demand that you take your militarized equipment and troops and stop occupying our communities immediately.
Now you're looking live. Cheers at that press conference, and jeers here from a lot of the protesters as some of the ICE vehicles move through that line, escorted by the National Guard members. But it has been peaceful. It has been quiet here at this location, despite what happened last night. But the concern right through this city is that all of this could explode quickly, as it did 24 hours ago. There's another location, if you're familiar with the city, Bristol and McFadden. That's a major intersection here in Santa Ana, in the heart of Santa Ana. There was a large crowd. We're told an even larger crowd than what we're seeing down here, gathering at that location. And I know they had some of the police deployment here, a SWAT team, also another tactical team, and they hightailed it out of here about 10 minutes ago, presumably going over to that location. The police bird in the air also has been flying around back and forth with its night sun. So they're watching that situation, that location, also keeping a close eye on this location, as this is where all the trouble really hit last night. But right at this hour, Christine and Susan, it is relatively quiet here in Santa Ana, but you can certainly feel the tension as everybody realizes, geez, we saw what happened last night. We don't want that to happen again here tonight.
Yeah, and we should note that we were there live last night in Santa Ana, bringing our viewers some of this coverage. This is Orange County versus LA County, but Santa Ana is a heavily Latino population and Asian population as well. But they did have some ICE operations there a day or so ago, and that did affect the community who was reacting to the ICE operations in their locations, and also some neighboring communities as well.
And what is confounding to me is what is the turning point, like what turned the crowd? So in the beginning, when we were down there, we saw, yes, a lot of people and a couple of skirmish lines, but then something happened, and it's what we saw in Little Tokyo last night as well. Like, you know, we can't quite figure out what is the trigger, what turns the crowd from a peaceful protest situation to something uglier.
It seems to be, you know, in watching this the last several nights, what are we talking, like 5 nights now since it all started Friday, and I've been down in downtown LA, first time here in Santa Ana, but it always seems to be the crowd. It's always tension in the air, certainly when they're face-to-face with law enforcement, face-to-face with the skirmish lines, and then you usually have one person or so who's the igniter, my opinion, and that's, I was thinking something what the former LAPD chief Bill Bratton used to call them, the knuckleheads, and it was just usually, I would watch it, it'd be one person who would excite the violence, light the fuse, if you will, by throwing a fireworks or something, or a bottle of water or something at the law enforcement, and then all of a sudden it would be on. They'd be on, they'd be clashing, they'd be jousting back and forth, and then the officers, particularly here last night, they were not, if you don't mind me saying, they were not fooling around with the tear gas and everything else. They really moved in quick, trying to put down the violence, trying to protect the federal area through here. And as the lawmakers were saying at that press conference earlier today down here in Santa Ana in the OC, they deplore this violence. They don't want any part of this violence. Sure, they're aiming. It's interesting. Their point is also what we heard up from Mayor Bass, and we've been hearing from her, that they're blaming the president and the immigration crackdown for this, blame some of the lawmakers here squarely on the president and what he's been doing. But the others are saying, regardless of that, you know, you can protest, you can come out like a lot of these folks. Look at, they're standing over there. At times you can hear them chanting, but there's no violence. And I suppose that's the point you're trying to make, Susan, is you can come out here and, you know, you could protest and you could make your viewpoint known as loud as you can, as some folks say they've lost their voice because they've just been chanting all day. Certainly you can do that, but when it comes to crossing the line physically with police, with law enforcement, smashing windows, you know, vandalism and loitering, everybody seems to just have no tolerance for that. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly, very much so. Yeah, throwing fireworks, throwing other projectiles at them, as we've seen in the LA downtown, pieces of concrete. Yes, well, I know. Can you imagine? So that is the concern.
And as we look at your picture here, I would say also, having watched what happened in LA could have given Orange County much more advance notice as to what was going on in Southern California and the issues affecting members of the community, allowing them to perhaps get in place, as LAPD talked about, it takes time to mobilize a lot of units and to prepare for a mass crowd. Also, you don't have the massive amount of people that you had in downtown LA, but you also had a pretty quick response from not only Santa Ana PD, but also the Orange County Sheriff's Department. They were both in place last night.
Ed Laskos, thank you very much.
Yeah, and the other, you know, they had mutual aid, so you had...
Sorry for interrupting.
No, I was going to say, I'm sorry, Susan.
Go ahead, Ed.
No, that's all right. I was just to Christine's point. No, to Christine's point, yes, you had Anaheim Police, Garden Grove, many of the surrounding agencies. They had, as they call it, mutual aid here last night, so they all came rushing in to help Santa Ana Police. And Christine, you made a great point. They said that at the press conference. They saw what was happening in L.A. They had several days advance notice. They knew sooner or later, because of the raids happening here in the OC, they were going to have trouble down here, and they started to mobilize early, and that may be the difference, the big difference here.
Ed Laskos, thank you very much. We're going to move on now. New tonight, while all the demonstrations are going on, ICE is still indeed conducting raids, this time in Culver City.
Fox 11's Gina Silva spoke to people who were directly affected and continues our coverage there. Gina, but you are in downtown LA right now, correct?
That is correct, and I'll get to that story in a second. But first, I want to show you what we're looking at here. We're at Alameda and Temple, and officers, as you can see, they are standing guard outside of the federal building. The curfew is already in effect and will remain in place until 6 a.m. And where we are, there aren't any demonstrators, really, any folks, a couple of homeless people who have been in the area and they're staying here. But other than that, it seems relatively peaceful. Now, as we were talking about these raids, there are many families that are being separated by the ICE raids, and of course the impact is devastating for those who are left behind. It is absolutely heartbreaking for them. Take a look at this specific case.
Doing that to that child like that.
I know, that's sad.
Man, that's crazy.
A dramatic and heartbreaking scene at a Culver City car wash. A 7-year-old Jorge Vasquez, that little boy cried uncontrollably as he watched ICE agents take his father away in handcuffs. Over the weekend, several ICE raids targeted car washes, but Arturo didn't work there. He was simply there to wash his car. His 15-year-old son, Brian Vasquez, admits his father is undocumented. He says when ICE agents showed up at the car wash, his father panicked and tried to leave, but agents stopped him and took him into custody.
It was normal people working their jobs, trying to provide for their own families to push to have a better life. All I want right now is my dad here home.
Arturo Vasquez worked 2 jobs to support his family. Friends have set up a GoFundMe account to help his wife and kids, and also to try to hire an attorney to help their father. If you would like to help, we'll have the details on our website. Now, today, the family also learned that Arturo Vasquez has already been transferred to a facility in Texas. And that is the impact that, these ICE raids have on many of the families, who also claim that they have no due process. In this specific case, he didn't work at the car wash. The agents were there to do a raid at that specific car wash. He happened to be there with his family to wash his car. And when the agents arrived, he panicked. He tried to get away, and of course he was stopped and taken in.
Gina, to the best of your knowledge, Arturo Vasquez, does he have any kind of a police record?
We don't know if he does or not. The family has stated before that he does not, that he was working 2 jobs. He apparently worked at Earth Cafe, was one of his employers, and they say he was just a hardworking man who supported his family by working those 2 jobs. He'd been trying to get legalized, but they talked about how it's been incredibly difficult and there was no pathway. It's what I was told.
Well, you mentioned Earth Cafe. That is a very popular restaurant, I'll say chain, but it was family founded, and I believe Pasadena might be their first location. Many of us have gone to Earth Cafe, know Earth Cafe very well. That's just a reminder, Gina, of how this is going to play out, where employers will be affected, customers will know people.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We went by the car wash to try to get a little bit of video and perhaps speak with someone there. It was closed. There was nobody there. And that's what we're hearing from folks, that if you go to certain groceries, there won't be anyone there, not like the usual traffic, because people are afraid. Brian, the 15-year-old we spoke with, says that he's afraid. He's a U.S. citizen, but he says that now I will be carrying my passport and a couple of extra IDs because I'm afraid that I could get picked up. So there's just a lot of fear in the community, of what's going on. A lot of folks saying, look, the initial statement was that we're going to go after hardcore criminals, people with criminal records, but the stories we're hearing from many families is that their loved ones didn't have a record.
Yeah.
Well, I know from people that I know that they don't have the criminal record in the sense that you and I think of a crime committed, but I personally know of somebody who had been removed from the country, sent back, and returned back, so he's considered a criminal because he violated the law in coming back to the country. Who knows the story here, but I think that it's an example of the true emotion that we are seeing and going to be seeing with families that are hit so directly by this.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why we're seeing so many protests all over the country. You know, people are protesting what they call unfair, unjust. Many were very much on board with getting the criminals, the people with the violent criminal records out of the country. They certainly, many were not on board with breaking up families and doing this kind of thing. Unfortunately, with some of the protests that we've seen, you know, the violence and the agitators who come in and destroy, if you look at this building, it is just heartbreaking to see all of the graffiti, the horrible things that are written on here about police officers, about just awful stuff. And of course, that isn't helping, as the mayor said, that is not helping the immigrant community, because that obviously gives, you know, the other side who do want complete, you know, mass deportations, no matter what the story may be, it gives them ammunition to say, look at all the destruction that these, you know, people are causing. But again, as the mayor has said, and many other officials have said, the protesters, many of them are very peaceful. They're out there marching, talking about what's unjust, and then unfortunately, there's another element that comes in and causes so much destruction.
Yeah. Gina Silva, thank you. I should point out, too, that 7-year-old boy that she was talking about, that is the little boy that Nick Melvoin, who is with LAUSD Board of Education, he had seen that same video, and he said, that little boy goes to West LA Elementary School. So he used that story to point out that it's wide-ranging, the people that will be affected, and it's not just East LA, Boyle Heights, or, you know, an area that is populated perhaps by the lower income strata, the economic strata, that it is all over the city of Los Angeles where there are people that are nervous and worried about an ICE raid.
And just noting that there are people, I'm sure, watching who are thinking that, well, if you came to this country illegally or undocumented,
that makes you a criminal.
Or that you're subject to knowing that there might be an issue at some point in time, and that is perhaps the consequences of that action. But this is Southern California, and we have a large immigrant population, and our economy is often dependent on so much of the work of the immigrant population, and so it's a very big issue affecting Southern California that may not affect other cities in this way.
So 39 minutes into the city-ordered curfew, and you see from Skyfox that there are indeed still some people that are milling about, maybe not even milling, they're just standing there as LAPD, as law enforcement, forms that very wide and multi-officer skirmish line to make sure that they don't head back towards the federal building. I believe that that's what they're trying to prevent. And these people do not look like they want to obey any kind of curfew order. Now, the curfew runs from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. And basically what the mayor and the police chief said was, if you do not live downtown, if you're not homeless, if you don't work downtown, they did, you know, say that if you work downtown and can prove it, then yeah, you're allowed to be out, not necessarily just roaming the streets. Homelessness, people experiencing homelessness, and members of the media. That's it. Everybody else, you're supposed to be off the streets and out of this curfew zone.
So as we are watching the scene here, thinking of that small group that is staying downtown, that maybe shouldn't be downtown, whenever you have a protest, and this is throughout history, there are people who are willing to be arrested, want to be arrested as part of the statement they're making. We've seen the agitators and the anarchist type of people. I'm wondering if those people are fleeing as to not be arrested, because what is their point in wanting to be arrested? What statement would they be making?
Well, getting arrested or detained in this kind of scenario where basically it's failure to disperse, it's it's kind of like a citation. So as you say, like when we remember George Floyd, the marches during George Floyd or Occupy LA, you're right. There are a lot of people that said, well, yeah, I want to be arrested. I want to make a point. But those that are in the category of the bad actor, yeah, perhaps they don't have that same kind of idea that it is good for the image to be arrested.
And there might be some here who are lingering to see how far and how much longer they can linger before police really move in. But when police decide to move in, and they usually give people some time, especially, people are walking there with their flags. They might have been at that rally at 6 o'clock in Grant Park. Police tend to allow you to get to your car, to make your way. But at some point when they decide they're not going to wait anymore, that's it.
And you've got to heed the orders of law enforcement. When police tell you to leave because there's a curfew, perhaps you don't know. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you didn't get that emergency alert that Laura Diaz got and other people that are in this zone, because now, of course, those emergency alerts can be targeted, geo-targeted. So if you're downtown, you'll get that geo alert. If you're anywhere near downtown, you'll likely get an alert on your phone. And everybody these days carries a phone. Now, I noticed some people that were in that mix, including a guy that had like a stick, like a photo stick, where you put a small camera or even a phone on it in order to video what's going on. So I noticed there was somebody in the crowd with one of those kind of, monopods, if you will. And so perhaps that's one of those people, modern day, that are all about posting and streaming and wants to find out, well, what happens if I'm 45 minutes into the curfew and I'm still here? Let's document the police. And as Gina mentioned, all the obscenities and all the sentiments which are anti-police, it's not just anti-ICE. Oh, what's going on? Let me just stop myself. And oh, it's just a motorcycle guy that's running his wheels in order to burn rubber.
We're going to get a little bit of expertise on what it means to have a curfew and for this state of emergency in the downtown area with retired LAPD officer Dekron Melkonian. Thank you for being with us again.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. So the curfew started at 8 o'clock. It's almost 8:45 p.m. My history tells me that LAPD gives you a little time to make your way out of there. How much time are we talking about?
Well, absolutely. It's going to be, especially for the first night, it's a reasonable standard issue. We understand it's new for everybody. It's a pretty early time slot as well for 8 p.m. So it's generally going to be officers going out, ensuring that people are, safely going to their premises. If there's anybody out there, look, you're overseeing it. You're kind of looking at what the situation is. You have families going home, people from the workplace, from other places. So you're really going to be especially for the first night, it's a very reasonable standard and just kind of advising people what to do.
So that's why we're seeing the LAPD with the heavy presence there, but not taking a huge amount of action just yet.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming you've worked these kinds of scenarios. What kind of reaction have you seen from the public in the past?
Quite honestly, there's a lot of positive sentiment as well. A lot of good people out there, community members, they're worried about their safety. And they like the fact that they're going to be officers there overseeing their communities, because it's a really difficult time sometimes. These are the issues that the bad folks take advantage of, especially at nighttime. Because they know officers are going to be in different parts of the city, some neighborhoods are not going to be well protected because you have so many officers getting diverted to one section of town or two locations and hotspots. People take advantage of that. So quite honestly, in my experience, when we're on patrol and going through these neighborhoods, people have a very positive effect and very are supportive of their officers.
So whether you're looking at a curfew or demonstrators or random people in the streets, your life will be affected. So I just talked to a business owner who said, yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's a curfew or too many protesters downtown or bad actors, the looters and those that were in a destructive point of mind. It's not helpful to anyone. So whether you're a resident downtown or a business downtown, any one of those scenarios is bad for them. So as far as the curfew is concerned, it means no one can come into downtown to patronize their businesses. But on the other hand, a lot of people were canceling anyway because of the fact they didn't want to run into roadblocks and people in the streets, causing mayhem. So at one point, you know, how long can this kind of ordered curfew go before those residents and businesses say, enough, we got to get back to normal?
Yes, and that's a great question, and that's something that you look at. You don't want this to lengthen in time. You want this to happen for maybe a day, 2 days, 3 at the most, and you want the normalcy to go back. Obviously, people are nervous about it. They're fearful about it. You want normalcy, and I think the best situation now is for the police, LAPD specifically, continue communicating with their community. Let the stakeholders, let the schools, let these businesses know what we're doing. Transparency is key. And we want to ensure that we are partners with them. That's what they're going to do now. They want to make sure that, hey, we want to get you guys back to normal, but we also want to make sure everybody is safe, family, business, and the community as a whole. So I think the more communication, the more transparency you're going to be seeing, a lot more outreach. That's really an effective strategy to get this back to where we should be.
What do you say to critics who might have been watching this over the days saying, why did it take this long? Too much damage has been done. Protesters have had too much free reign, and I mean those who've been the bad actors already, and that it's a late response in their eyes.
Right, and look, as a layperson, I can understand that. As an officer going through the ranks, I can understand that. But command staff, it's politically charged as well. You don't want to come in as a command staff heavy-handed immediately and putting in that situation where police are overrunning a protest or overrunning anything else, because now it seems like the police are inserting themselves and becoming that authority that is overextending. And you don't want that to come out to be that way where the police are against the community. That's why you'll see this going a little bit slower, because you want to respect the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. But once it turns from that to what we're seeing now in certain pockets and certain times where it's a legitimate riot on our hands, then it changes. And then the action, it's really more reactivity, because if you're very proactive initially and do it so quickly, now you're the bad guy and now you're infringing on people's rights. And that's the problem that they don't want to have.
Yeah, the line in the sand seems to be the 23 businesses that were looted and damaged overnight. Now, let me ask you, in terms of the curfew zone, it seems really extensive for those people who know really where most of the protesters have been, that it's a rather small portion of that giant, well, it's only 1 square mile, but of that, the curfew zone is bordered by all those freeways, which the mayor said was on purpose because of the way we, as people who live in LA and Southern California, how we understand the geography, if you will, of the city. But do you think it could have been smaller in order to not affect business in, say, Chinatown or nearer to crypto.com?
You know, as a matter of fact, my wife and I were at Crypto just last night, and what a difference it would make, right? I think that's all part of the equation. Look, how big, how small, anything you do is going to be criticized, right? And I know they don't want to extend it too much out. You want to start smaller and expand if you need to, just to limit that problematic situations you're going to have. And you hit it right on the head. It's the 110, it's the 10, it's the 5. It's all these freeways that are going to be affected, because that's where the problems are happening, right? These folks are getting on the freeways, are creating that damage. More problems can occur, people getting run over or get struck. That's what you're trying to limit. So yes, you're trying to balance between providing that safety and also not affecting the community overall in such a stringent way.
Not sure if you're seeing our live pictures here on Fox 11. So the picture with the white bus, that is that bus that they will transport people who've been arrested or detained. On the picture on your right, we've seen at least 3 people put in those zip ties right there. They seem to be willingly going there, or perhaps they got boxed in and sorry, too late. The curfew's well underway, and you got caught up in the zone that is a curfew zone. But tell me what you think if you're seeing these pictures, officer.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now in a few minutes here. But quite honestly, in that situation, and again, the officers are giving that same mold as well, where let's try to find out what we have first. Who are these people? Is this a family? Are these people just going back from another location? They're not part of any type of melee or problematic issues. So that's what the officers will always err on the side of caution, to make sure that we're not going in an overly aggressive manner to handle what's happening, because there's a high risk of fear right now for a lot of people. And when that happens, it becomes more problematic to communicate properly of what's going on. So I think at this time what the officers are doing is just ensuring that whoever's in the area are being advised and making sure there's nothing in those vehicles that's going to become a problem for them, and making sure these folks are going home in a rather safe manner.
Yep. We are watching more LAPD officers move into space there, and we also saw the mounted units making a move there as well. You know, it's been a tough time, let's just say that, also for local law enforcement. How many of us know somebody who has dedicated themselves to serving the city as a police officer to deal with these crowds? But fair to speak also, this is a Tuesday night. You don't have the crowds that you saw on a Saturday and a Sunday. And also, Chief Jim McDonald said sometimes it takes 2 to 3 days before the protests ramp up to their full height. That would have been Sunday, give or take, Monday spillover. You don't have the crowds that we had before, meaning LAPD isn't outnumbered tonight.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think, yes, you're right. The issues are the first night you're kind of getting caught off guard potentially based on what's happening. But as the nights continue, now you're gathering the resources, you're getting all the allocated officers that you need, and now you're making sure you're ensuring that those hot spots, if you will, are going to be handled. And again, the numbers are big for us, right? We have to have the right numbers. So at least we're trying to make sure that it stays peaceful, or if there's riots starting or civil unrest starting, we immediately identify which persons are doing that to incite this, and immediately make the detention or the arrest or remove that person from that crowd, so now the crowd can minimize or at least go back to a peaceful standard rather than getting incited by it.
I'm curious whether or not you can speak to what we've been watching the last couple of minutes, where we saw a line of officers sort of jogging towards an intersection and then kept going. Whether they're just en route to another location, they've been ordered to move, or whether that somehow is effective in kind of getting the message across. You need to get out all the people that are downtown who don't deserve to be downtown.
Yeah, what happens on those, again, I'm not there and I'm not listening to the radio, but what happens in those cases is you'll get on the radio, there'll be another flare-up. You'll start getting issues where somebody's throwing rocks and bottles or creating some kind of major issue. So where the officers are at currently, they'll have to minimize the presence there and respond to the next location so they can diffuse any problems coming up. So there's a lot of communication going on. We have our officers out there that are in plain clothes as well, that are monitoring these things and can hear and see things. So before it actually acts up, they can see and hear what's going on and relay that to the uniformed officers, so we can get there and be proactive about it, and this time make sure that it does not start becoming a problem.
Absolutely. It's interesting to see, though, that there were a couple of people on scooters. They seem to be taunting officers, and that they're kind of riding around in front of the officers as the skirmish line moves. And of course they're filming, and I'm wondering, filming on their phones, and I'm wondering how cell phones and social media and all the streaming that you can do now, how that's changed the equation, if at all.
Well, that's a great question, and that really has. I think if people see so much of it live right then and there, there's no longer people going out to the news at night at 11 to see what's going on. They're seeing it as it's like I am right now with you watching it. And because of that, that's going to bring in people to the area that want to create a problem. It's one thing they're going to protest during the day and what have you, but this is the nighttime, and this changes. And we know that as officers, the daytime versus nighttime really changes. And a lot of these folks is what they're doing. They're trying to get on the streaming. They want to get the likes, and they want to bring the people over to create these problems. And yes, it's a huge problem for LAPD. But one good thing is we also have logistics there too. Officers do monitor these sites. They know who they are. So I think they're also getting the information on where and when things are happening as well.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Chief Jim McDonald had said that there are a lot of videos out there and that they had made arrests, over 100 today alone. And he said more are coming. So there's the pro and con of people documenting themselves, doing whatever they're doing. But I think as people are watching this, they're thinking, but are you arresting the rioters? Are you arresting the people who did the damage? Are you arresting the people who did the spray painting at this hour? Yeah,
there was an older, like middle-aged man or older that just seemed like he happened to be there. He doesn't look like he was going to go loot, the Apple store. I mean, I can't say that 100%, but yeah, there's a whole mix of people in this group of people that have decided to hang around.
Right, but just to answer that, a lot of times you might not see on video, but if the officers, let's say if there are undercover other officers that observed him doing something or her doing something prior, we didn't see on what you're seeing on your telecast right now, they can advise the officers that's the person we're looking for. 3-4 minutes ago, he did this, this, and this. So a lot of times you'll see a detention being made, but not necessarily you didn't see the action that was precluding it.
Yeah, indeed. Deacon
Malconian,
thank you for your perspective. We really appreciate your great insight on what's going on because, of course, we're not down there and we're just watching from Skyfox. So, again, at this point, we're going to take a break and come back with LA Live News tonight at 9 o'clock. Stay with us.
Across SoCal, this is LA Live News Tonight on Fox 11 Plus.
To let the city know that I have declared a local emergency and issued a curfew for downtown Los Angeles.
Now at 9, a curfew in downtown LA is in place tonight as the city tries to get control over protesters and the bad actors that are looting and vandalizing property. Plus, religious and city leaders come together tonight in Grand Park to share a message of peace, prayers, and call for an end to violence. The vigil is among the protests amid the ICE raids. Good evening to you. You're watching LA Live News Tonight. I'm Susan Hirashuna here for Marla Tejas. Tensions continue to run high in downtown LA as anti-ICE protests enter their 5th night. Nearly 5,000 federal troops, including National Guard and Marines, have been deployed by President Trump, originally sent to protect federal buildings. They're now assisting with immigration arrests. Governor Gavin Newsom criticized the move tonight, saying it unfairly targets workers and sets a dangerous precedent by deploying the state's National Guard without his approval. Protests erupted downtown today, with demonstrators shutting down the 101 freeway. In response, Mayor Karen Bass issued a curfew in downtown L.A. until 6 a.m. tomorrow, and the LAPD reports arrests after protesters ignored dispersal orders. Now, the curfew is in effect until 6 a.m. It started at 8 p.m., and that was due to the night's unrest last night, where there was a lot of looting, damage, and it was just awful. 23 businesses. Now, the curfew started at 8, so we're about an hour into it. Covers about 1 square mile of downtown Los Angeles. It's bordered by the 5, the 110, and the 10 freeways. Now, officials hope the curfew will restore order while allowing peaceful demonstrations to continue. Fox 11's Laura Diaz is live downtown with us for the very latest. And Laura, you were at that vigil earlier this evening, and now where are you?
We're in front of the detention center, and that's where people who were at the vigil elected to walk from Grand Park over here to the detention center on LA Street. And of course, this is an area that we've been seeing often over the last 5 days as the unrest has developed, as the ICE raids came first and then people started protesting, and in some cases, you know, it devolved into something else. So here at the detention center, I'm going to step out of the picture. We've been watching as people are carefully checked to see if they have a right to be here. In fact, we know the only ones who are allowed to be here after 8 o'clock are media. So a few people who I believe thought that they would be able to stay, but once their ID was checked and authorities here determined that they did not have valid ID, that they were not members of the press, then they were indeed handcuffed, and we are told that they will be put into that LAPD bus that you see off to the left, and they will be booked. They were ordered to disperse. We all knew that after 8 o'clock, had to get out of the area, only media allowed to stay. So that's the scene here. But earlier today, it was a much different scene when we were at Grand Park. Let's listen to what people had to say there, including a very prominent priest here in Southern California. Let's listen.
We want to support the families. So here they're talking about, families are sacred, and so we want to underscore that, and we want to resist, the lies really about Los Angeles that somehow the chaos requires National Guard and the Marines, which of course is not true.
That was Father Greg Boyle talking. He was one of the many people who spoke today. We also heard from a rabbi, and she had poignant words as well. And we heard from community leaders and Mayor Bass. Basically, the message was said in different ways by different people: stay together. You have a message you want to get out to the world, do it peacefully. Show the world that Los Angeles is a peaceful place, that we are a place where we support neighbors and we support the cause of people who've come over to this country and work hard and deserve the right to stay. She said, as did many others, that if people have broken the law, if they've broken the law to get into this country and they've come here and they've committed horrible crimes, then of course they have to pay for those crimes. But they wanted to support the people who've been in this country for many years, who pay taxes and work hard. So that was the sentiment that we heard over and over again. I think there were about 500 people in Grand Park. I would say about half of them made the trek over here to the detention center. And then, it was about 7:45 when everybody arrived here, and then at 8 o'clock it was time to go. When I looked around, and my cameraman felt the same as I, we looked around and we felt that the people who had been at that prayer vigil, most of them left at 8 o'clock because they knew it was time to go. The other people who hung back were some of the ones that we recognized from last night, who then got involved in activity that was very harmful to property and to people. So we do see some of the same people coming around, trying to make problems. They're not part of the group that has something they want to express in a peaceful manner and support their neighbors. Coming back live here, though, in front of the detention center, you can see that there is a large presence by LAPD. Earlier, they were the mounted police. Here we have officers that are booking those who elected to stay after the 8 o'clock curfew. And I will say that when we were asked to move back, we were asked to move in the most aggressive manner that we've been told since I've been covering this story over the last 5 days. We had to move back quickly. I think I was in the middle of a live shot when that happened, and they pushed us back quite a few feet from where we were before, because they were going to begin the process of trying to determine who was here that deserved to be here, and the only one who's allowed to be here after 8, if you don't live in this area, are the media. So those people are being arrested and they will be taken away. So it's peaceful here now, but there's a large police presence. Also, the guard was here earlier. I don't see them now, ensuring that things are quiet in this spot in downtown LA. Susan?
And you know what we're not seeing, Laura, we're not seeing anyone lob water bottles or worse, fireworks at police. Nothing like that tonight.
No, obviously the area is secured, so we won't see any of that tonight. At least from my vantage point, I'm able to see almost all the way to the freeway and then down the street. But when the LAPD moved in, they moved in quickly and they moved in with conviction. As people like to say, they weren't playing. I mean, we knew to get out of the way fast. So that's what we're seeing right now. Just those people being booked. They're being lined up along that gate there. And presumably they'll be taken away in that bus and I guess perhaps spend the night in jail. I'm not exactly sure. I don't think you'd be released OR. I think probably people will spend the night in jail. But this is the scene in downtown, and I assume that it's quiet in other parts of the city as well. This is the only place I've been today. But a story I told to you earlier that I thought was quite fascinating. After we finished our live coverage last night and I got back to my destination at 7th and Olive, I saw, we weren't that far away. We were, 7 blocks from where all that lawlessness had taken place. All the vandalism and people hurting other people. And people at 7th and Olive were out on dates, Susan. I saw couples walking by holding hands, walking down the street to go have dinner, and other people walking up to the taco truck. And trust me, they didn't have a clue what was going on not far from where they were. So that's the difficulty of it. If you own a business and you're thinking, come on, I'm not close to where that activity is taking place, why can't I stay open? But, the mayor and the chief of police have to do what's best for the people of the city to keep them safe. And they have determined that having this curfew is what's safe for people. And we have to trust them. We elected them into office, and it's their decision to make.
Good point, Laura Diaz. Thank you. Indeed, because it is a huge, square mile of the curfew zone. And as she pointed out, you could be not that far away when things are happening, and yet you don't see any of this kind of thing that we've been focusing on the last 5 nights. All right, let me show you this. Crowds protesting the anti-immigration raids marched onto the 101 freeway in downtown Los Angeles earlier today. The CHP mobilized quickly to move protesters out of freeway lanes. The confrontation shut down traffic briefly, but it's moving again tonight, and last we saw, there were definitely law enforcement officers at on-ramps on locations where protesters could access the freeway. All right, we're going to go to meteorologist Adam Kruger.
Yep.
It's kind of like a amuse-bouche. It's kind of a way to clear the palate and enjoy some good news about our weather.
A palate cleanser. I'll try to be that. Although I do have a fire to talk about, which has been growing over the course of the evening. That's up in the high desert. So you see that little icon. We'll get to that. We'll start with the winds, though, because earlier this was wind-driven. Winds were quite gusty in the desert earlier, blowing from south to north. Here's a look at current wind speeds. We've got Victorville, which, by the way, this fire is called the Ranch Fire. It's a little southeast of Victorville, just a little south of the center of Apple Valley. It went from 3 300 acres at about 4 o'clock or so this afternoon to now 2,800 acres. Winds were stronger earlier. They've come down a little bit, sustained around 10 in that area, although tomorrow those winds are going to pick back up once again. So let's look at that wind forecast. Oh, and by the way, earlier we had that little fire near Burbank, which as far as we know has been put out. Less of a wind situation there, and it was on the small side, 8-10 acres, something like that. So again, as we look at the wind forecast here going into tomorrow, you can see how tomorrow afternoon those wind speeds start to pick up in that region with gusts that could be over 20 miles per hour. So that'll be a spot to watch. Again, it's known as the ranch fire. Temperatures right now, we've got 60s to around 70 as you go a little farther inland. Of course, in the desert, it is hot. We got some 80s, Apple Valley at 87 over towards Palm Springs. It's just under 100 degrees at this current time. Here's a look at the lows overnight. 78 for Palm Springs, 40s in Big Bear. Quite a contrast between those two spots as we often see. But for a lot of us, low temperatures, low 60s to around 60 degrees. We're also going to find our June gloom pattern hanging around for many more days, which means the clouds, the marine layer will kind of move in during the overnight. It'll hold during the early morning hours. That's a look at 7 a.m. The clouds basically go up to the mountains, and that's where they stop. And then as we get later into the day, those clouds go away. I think we might find some cloud cover hanging out near the coast or perhaps over some of the beaches in the afternoon. Most of the rest of the area, though, will be sunny to mostly sunny. And then high temperatures tomorrow will be warmer, like we saw today. That was, one of the things we expected to change this week is temperatures coming up, and that certainly happened today. Here's a look at the forecast highs tomorrow. Inland Empire, we've got some 90s there. Valleys will be probably into the 80s. Santa Clarita at around 92. I think we get just over 80 for LA. And then, of course, the closer you go to the ocean, the cooler it's going to be, near 70 or low 70s along the coast. And you see those triple digits in the desert, especially the low desert like Palm Springs. Something like 109 is possible for tomorrow. So our 7-day forecast, again, it's many more days where the clouds move in at night and into the morning hours, maybe some patchy fog. That's why we call it June gloom. It tends to happen this time of year, and clouds go away later in the day. Temperatures pretty steady, but going up a little bit for the coast, probably mid-70s by the weekend. The middle row right here is LA and inland Orange County, where it's going to be around 80 for the highs through Friday. Temps come up to 83 on Saturday, 85 on Sunday for Father's Day, and then down a little bit as we go into next week. Valleys and Inland Empire, we've got 80s for the most part, although, again, I think the IE will see 90s more so instead of 80s for the next several days. Switching it to the mountains on the warm side there as well, around 80 degrees for several days ahead. High desert will be upper 90s to near 100, and the low desert will be the hot spot where temperatures will average between 105 to 110 for several days, with the hottest temps coming for this weekend coming up. Susan?
Adam, thank you so much. More reaction tonight to the ongoing ICE raids, protests, and now military moving into Southern California. Some Orange County leaders are opposed to President Trump's order to send in more National Guard troops, and they have a message to local and federal law enforcement. Let's go live to Fox 11's Ed Lascos. He's in Santa Ana with the latest there. Ed.
And Susan, it's a different type of protest that we're seeing here tonight as the one that hit and erupted 24 hours ago. Joe will give you a look. This is Bristol we're looking at here, just north of Edinger, the cross. It's a main artery right through the city of Santa Ana. And it's been a protest, if you will. It's with a lot of the vehicles driving through the loop here on Bristol. Most folks, just as that pickup went by, they've got their flags out. Others have signs out, as you can imagine, taking criticism of ICE. Then you have some folks walking on the sidewalk. And it's been this type of protest here as compared to the one that last night really formed and targeted a skirmish line right by the Civic Center Plaza and the federal buildings. That one was a horrible situation that led to arrest, that led to vandalism. So police at this point are letting this crowd, if you will, blow off steam. They're driving with their vehicles. A larger crowd gathered at the intersection with Edinger, and at this point they're just going around blowing their horns, some setting off fireworks, non-violent. But compared to what we saw last night, to that video we go, that is what police and the county leaders were trying to avoid this, the skirmish with the couple hundred protesters over there at Civic Center Plaza by the federal building, the Immigration Center, the Ronald Reagan Courthouse, a standoff with police, the crowd at times throwing fireworks, other projectiles at police fighting back, firing back with tear gas, with their non-lethal munitions. Several arrested, dozens arrested, we're told, along with the vandalism that followed as it started as an easy protest, a street-based protest, if you will, and then turned into this violent confrontation with police. But that led to a press conference a couple of hours ago with county leaders out saying that we can stop the violence. Everybody stay calm, but a big part of keeping everybody calm is a plea to the federal government and perhaps even to the president himself to pull back the military, the National Guard, and the Marines. Listen to this county supervisor.
This morning, we heard from our district attorney, and we agree that law enforcement needs to show the same restraint that we are asking of the public. We don't want to see any excessive force or civil rights violations by our law enforcement agency at any level. To the federal administration, we demand that you take your militarized equipment and troops and stop occupying our communities immediately.
And now live, the cheers as that press conference came to an end. I can tell you at this location, some more fireworks down at that intersection over at Edinger, and also at the Federal Building tonight by the Civic Center Plaza. Easy, very few protesters out tonight. A very much different situation, ladies, than what we saw here in Santa Ana 24 hours ago. Back to you.
Ed Laskos, thank you very much. Still ahead at 9, a big change is coming to U.S. Army bases. President Trump reveals his plan to restore their original names. New tonight, President Donald Trump said he plans to bring back the original names of 7 Army bases that were renamed to cut ties with the Confederacy. Apologies. Now this story. New tonight, while all the demonstrations are going on, ICE is still conducting raids as far away, well, not that far, but Culver City. So we're going to go to Gina Silva to talk about what happened there. Gina.
Well, I want to show you what's actually taking place right now. We are at First and Los Angeles, and you can see there a line of police officers. They are preventing people from walking up and down the street because there is a curfew. The curfew is in place from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. And across the street, there are several demonstrators who were just standing around there, and then they did walk on this street here on First and Los Angeles, and they walked by and just basically started saying peaceful protest, peaceful protest. Of course, a few that were there did taunt some of the officers, and so that was taking place, and the officers were just standing in place, not doing anything. Then all of a sudden, just a few minutes ago, we saw more police officers come up on First Street, and they immediately started firing some of the tear gas toward Los Angeles Street. And the crowd, you can just see there's a smaller number of people there, but earlier there was a large crowd that was walking up and down. Obviously, they know that there is a curfew that's in place, and they're not supposed to be here. So at some point, we knew that this was going to happen. They were either going to be told to leave, and if they don't leave, they would be arrested. And that's possibly what's happening now, but officers are trying to take control of the situation. It has been announced that there is a curfew. You see the officers moving in. Again, we're at 1st Street and Los Angeles, and the officers are moving toward some of the protesters who have refused to leave the area. And at this point, you know, the group mostly has disappeared. I mean, there are a few that are still standing their ground there, but overall, people have left the scene. The officers are taking control of this situation, which is a good thing, because when there's a larger crowd, sometimes it gets out of control.
And Gina, they can chant peaceful protest all they want. The bottom line is there is now a curfew in that area, and police have every right to do what they need to do to get them out, including arrest.
Absolutely. And they were warned. They were warned. They were given plenty of time. They knew that this was a curfew. And again, you know, it's already what time? 9:21. So it's an hour and 21 minutes past the curfew, and they still refuse to leave. So at this point, the officers will keep walking toward the group that is still standing and eventually push them out of the area that they have been positioned at and protesting. But so you're right. And their message was peaceful protest, but the curfew is in place.
Right, you see a bit of a standoff right there. So you've got the line of police, and then in front of them, those protesters that are not moving. Of course, one of them has an upside-down American flag, and that is a tell on how their point of view is. Yeah, their point of view about police and about the government in general. So it will be interesting to see.
That is a much smaller group.
A much smaller group, but still an illegal one.
100%. Yes.
So we're watching.
What I'm saying is, at this point, it is what the officers are doing is working, because the larger group has left. Now you've just got, I don't know exactly how many, but perhaps, 5 to 10 that are just standing there. Earlier, there must have been at least 100. And that was just about, 15, 20 minutes ago. Be careful.
Oh. So once they see all of those police officers, it is a cooling effect, and the smart ones anyway, move on. Okay, we also have an aerial view too that we're looking at that shows that there are some demonstrators, or also people in downtown LA. They're on the move. So not the area where you are, where we see a little bit of that standoff of, you suggest that there could be fewer than a dozen people there, but regardless, they're not supposed to be there. The mayor was quite clear, so was the chief of police. And all of this, of course, is to gain control on what has been happening in the downtown area for the last 5 nights. And the mayor was pretty specific, and the chief of police, once all that looting took place overnight. That was the line in the sand. But Gina, the good news is last night in Santa Ana, you experienced pepper balls or some kind of tear gas, and tonight, nothing like that. They haven't used that kind of tactic, the LAPD.
No, they have not. Obviously, in Santa Ana, there was a much larger group, and that specific group that we witnessed, they were taunting the officers, and it was getting out of control, so they were repeatedly firing pepper balls. And we were not close to where the officers were. We were a few blocks away, and we could still smell it, and it just was incredibly powerful.
And effective. Because ultimately, Orange County sheriffs as well as Santa Ana police got control of that crowd and made numerous arrests. So that is most likely
and there will be numerous arrests tonight as well.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the mounted units are there now too, and they're very effective because those animals are so big. It's hard to push back when you have a big animal, and one that, by the way, everyone loves. Everybody loves those horses.
Yes. Yeah, they do, and they are beautiful, and it, as you said, it does work. This curfew, of course, the reason I overheard some people here, some of the protesters saying that it is, in their words, BS, and it's not right, and they have a right to protest. But the reason, we've seen some of the destruction, and the mayor wanted to clarify and make sure, people across the country think that it's all over Los Angeles. It is just a very small area of Los Angeles where this is happening, and that's why the curfew area is between the 110 freeways, and it's just a specific area. But when you walk around here, Susan, and you look at the buildings, many of them beautiful buildings, they've all been tagged. They all have horrific wording, awful attacks on police officers and ICE agents, and it doesn't look good, and I'm sure it's hurtful for many in law enforcement.
Indeed. And for residents of Los Angeles and Southern California who love the city, love the beauty of the city, it's all been tagged, as you say, and marked up with things that should not be on your TV. But unfortunately, it becomes a part of our coverage because it's just so prevalent.
Yeah, it's impossible. When we pan over from one side to another, you'll see the F word, you'll see vulgarities, and it's impossible for us to cover it. It's just all over the place, but when we talk about, and I think we just got something on air right now, there are so many businesses that have been affected by the looting, by the vandalism, and many of these stores, we're talking about a total of $1 million losses. So enough is enough is what essentially these officials said during the conference this evening. 23 businesses were affected.
And it's interesting, Gina. Laura Diaz pointed out that she went to a different part of what is now the curfew zone, and she said those people were out and about enjoying the evening and didn't even know that not very far away or several blocks away there was this kind of chaos, that there was the kind of chaos that she experienced not far from where you are now in Little Tokyo. So it's just so interesting, and I asked a retired policeman what he thought about the size of the curfew zone, the fact that it would impact so many different people, residents and businesses. I mean, imagine, I talked to a business owner tonight who said where his restaurants are, he's one of the owners of Level 8, which is not far from Crypto.com. He said, we're shut down. Everything, even before they announced the curfew, everything was canceled. All the people that were scheduled to come to his establishment, they canceled. And then I talked to one of his staffers who said, yeah, I'm just shutting everything down because no one's going to be there. Of course no one's going to be there now because of the curfew. And that's despite that the fact that there could be people not very far from where you are now, say 5-6 blocks away, who are not aware that this kind of thing is happening. But so many businesses are going to be affected regardless of whether they were impacted by the bad actors, the looters last night. So many other businesses as well, they're hurting because of the fact that people don't want to come downtown.
No, I mean, who wants to come downtown when you've got this kind of situation going? And you know, there's obviously the fear of getting hurt, getting caught in the middle of some of the skirmishes. It's just, you know, not a good thing that's happening. It's been now the 5th day of this. And that is why they decided that this curfew has to be in place. And the mayor made it very clear, so did the chief, that they will arrest individuals who break the law and they will be prosecuted.
Absolutely. In fact, in one screen, we're looking at the buses, those big white buses that will come in. They are emblazoned with LAPD, but they are brought in specifically to move the detainees for processing. So right now we're seeing one that's basically in front of the federal building. And then in the larger screen, you're looking at Gina's shot at first in Los Angeles, so that's a part of Little Tokyo. And then we have another live shot from Skyfox that shows the fact that there are people still in the downtown area, still in the curfew zone, but they are on the move. So that might help them for a little bit until the skirmish lines perhaps get a little closer to where they are and forces them to either be arrested or, again, they might be on the move because they're trying to get out of the location, but they had 90 minutes to figure that out. And have you heard any kind of public announcement, Gina, at all from police telling them about the curfew?
Yes, throughout the night they've been announcing it. There's a curfew, you need to leave. And, it's not a secret. It's been announced for hours now. So, yes, and they make it very clear. And there are hundreds of officers, not just LAPD that you see out here, hundreds of officers from police and sheriff's departments that are working with the LAPD. They're from across the region and the state, and they're here to help in this kind of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you get an emergency alert? Because Laura at one point got an emergency alert on her phone because, of course, thanks to geolocators, if you're anywhere near the curfew zone, you're going to get an emergency alert. Did you get that?
I did. So it seems like everybody who lives in LA County would have received that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We did not get it here. We're in Los Angeles. I didn't see anything like that. Of course, we were well aware of the curfew zone and when it would be enacted, when the curfew started. 8 p.m. seems a little early nowadays, considering that there is an entertainment zone in that part of downtown LA when you consider Crypto.com, LA Live, and of course, as Laura pointed out yesterday, Little Tokyo has become a place to go. And Chinatown, which we haven't actually seen protesters in the Chinatown area, that is impacted as well. That is a part of the curfew zone.
Yes, the curfew, the boundaries are pretty much from the 5 freeway to the 110, from the 10 freeway to the 110, and as they merge. So it is just, what is it, a quarter mile?
The mayor says a mile, 1 square mile. But when you consider where you are right now and where the federal building is and where the Metropolitan Detention Center or Roybal is, that's like 3 blocks. Am I wrong? It's pretty close.
Yes. Yes, it's a very small area.
It's just sort of interesting that, I mean, I should point out Little Tokyo is on the corner. A lot of people have been at like First and Alameda in the course of it. That's because it's like half a block or a block away from the MDC, from the Metropolitan Detention Center, and where all the National Guard has been around that garage. Where we saw actually Saturday night, Sunday night, the agents that were at the gate or the garage made sure that the protesters that came anywhere close, and they were able to get close because that building is tagged too, but made sure that they knew that the message was, no, you're not making entry. You're not getting closer, any closer to a federal building. Okay, we're still watching.
We saw the line of officers by the federal building there.
Yeah, we're watching.
I was saying we were at the federal building earlier, and yes, we were at the federal building. We saw all of the officers that were there making sure that no one crossed the line there. And really, there weren't any protesters in that area. We saw a couple of homeless people who are allowed to be in the area if they live here. So that's about it. It was pretty peaceful there. When we got to this location, we saw at least, I don't know, 100 people or so that were hanging out, and again they were walking back and forth saying peaceful protest, and they kept walking in front of the officers, and nobody was doing anything until just when we went live, when they started moving the crowd out of the area, because it is the curfew area that we're talking about. Now, earlier, as we reported, I mean, people try to take over the 101 freeway. So it can get out of control fast if they don't take immediate action.
Yeah, well, you experienced that last night in Santa Ana, so in Orange County, far, far away from all of this action, as we watch as some of the detainees are being led away, and they will be loaded onto one of those buses, those white LAPD buses, to be processed for staying in the curfew zone past the point of the start of the curfew. Gina, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much for your reporting for us in Little Tokyo. We're going to turn now to Attorney Mary David. And Mary, one of the things we haven't talked about at length is the fact that the governor who made this threat for a couple days, that he was going to sue the Trump administration to stop the fact that he has ordered in all the National Guard troops, and now Marines, 700 Marines apparently are going to, or they have arrived today and will be dispatched. We're not quite sure where. What does it mean to you that the judge today didn't immediately allow for that restraining order to stop this kind of activity?
Temporary restraining orders can involve notice to the other party, but it's not required. And in a case like this, where you're involving the highest levels of office, it's not surprising that the court is allowing time for the Trump administration to respond.
And that will come on Thursday. So what do you expect to see on Thursday?
Well, in between now and then, you are going to have responses that are issued, and the courts are really going to be evaluating what is the immediate imminent harm, because it really has to rise to that level in order to prevent the Trump administration from continuing to deploy troops.
Well, meantime, the Attorney General of the state of California, Rob Bonta, was quite confident that they would make their case today and be successful, and it didn't happen. So what does that say, and what do they have to do on Thursday in order to get their way, if you will?
Well, again, the judge not granting it today is not necessarily indicative of the final response. This was more just a opportunity for the Trump administration to respond because it is of such a high level issue. But what is on Governor Newsom's side is the language of the statute, which very clearly says that the authorization for military force shall, not may or might, it shall, it must come from the governor. And there is also just the very real presence of military force and how that might be amplifying and actually increasing the level of danger in the area. So that is something that they will definitely need to emphasize and provide proof to, because the standard is clear and convincing evidence. So they do have to show a strong backing for that.
So meantime, the president does have one more arrow in his quiver, in that he can announce that he's invoking the Insurrection Act. So can you explain the Insurrection Act and why that might make a difference here? And what does the situation have to look like in order for him to use that act?
The Insurrection Act is required as one of the ways that the president can authorize the use of military troops on U.S. soil, because that is only allowed in very specific circumstances. So if there is a situation of rebellion, unrest, the president does have that in his arsenal, and the courts have been deferential to the president's executive function capacities. But local law enforcement are the governing body to authorize force and to police local populations. That is not something that falls within the purview of the military. So that's something that is going to weigh against Trump. And if he does actually use the Insurrection Act, if it's after the temporary restraining order is granted, if that does happen, that would actually just increase the possibility to the court that this is an overstepping and a violation of the 10th Amendment, because there was already a ruling that this level of force was too much and not authorized.
But what you're saying or suggesting is that if the judge rules against the Trump administration and for the state of California, that if he invokes the Insurrection Act, that would be suggestive that he, is not following the judge's order.
It would not necessarily mean that he's not following the judge's order, because now he's using a different statute, a different act in order to employ those forces. But again, litigation will continue. Newsom is not going to just give up at that point. And so in further litigation of that, could work against him in the argument that, well, you were already suggested by the governor that they don't want you here, and you're continuing to bring in troops. And so you're looking for a way to get around what the governor, who is the head of California, is saying that he wants.
But what you're saying is the police chief here in the city of Los Angeles has already says it's our responsibility to police the streets, not the responsibility of the National Guard. That's the difference, the line between the responsibilities of the National Guard, or if indeed Marines wind up in front of the federal building in downtown LA or Westwood, they're not supposed to be policing.
Absolutely. That falls within the purview of local law enforcement. They're the ones who are designed to assess the threats on a daily level. They're used to policing civilian populations. The military is not equipped and designed to do that and respond in the same way to threats, and that's why it is a very limited use that it's supposed to be if they are being used on U.S. soil. So in this case, only to protect the federal buildings and only to protect the federal operations. So in this case, carrying out the raids.
Right. So that is in fact what LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell said. He pointed out those people are trained for international conflict. This is a domestic conflict. This is the city of Los Angeles, and the officers involved are experienced with the city of Los Angeles, not these Marines or the National Guard, correct, that are coming in. And coming in, some might say, some critics would say, it's more theatrics than it is for a purpose.
Yes, and the other things that are to be considered too is, for example, with the use of the National Guard and even with the Marines, those are not the functions that they are typically carrying out. And the National Guard, they're employed for things like the wildfires. We're getting into summer. We need to be able to conserve those resources for when they're really needed. So there has to be a strong showing that they were absolutely needed. There was an immediate harm that required them to be here. So that's the burden that the Trump administration really has to meet.
Meantime, not just the city of Los Angeles, so not Mayor Karen Bass, but also the people down in Orange County. They're now expressing, the politicians there are expressing the fact that they want to make sure that the National Guard, and I believe what the Orange County supervisor said was all your militarized equipment needs to get out of our county. So is that in any way persuasive to a judge? And what do we know about this judge, by the way?
Well, it is persuasive in the fact that it again speaks to other officials who are saying we don't want this presence here, and it speaks to is this use of the National Guard, is it really serving the broader interests here? But again, courts have been quite deferential to the executive function powers of the president. They have cited in past opinions that they do very much give credence to that. So that's where that gray area comes in. And how do you also show that the harm that's being caused is directly tied to the increased military presence? Some of the looting, for example, and other activities it might be harder to make that leap of how do you know what their intent was and that was directly fueled by the president's actions. So that would also present a wrinkle there in the legal argument.
For sure. I think there's a lot of people who feel like that particular argument is not persuasive, at least in the court of public opinion. But people do want peace, and so those that are very much in favor of what the Trump administration is doing are saying, yeah, bring them on, bring them in. But again, the primary point of Governor Newsom and Rob Bonta's, the AG's, the point of the suit was also to point out that the states are sovereign, and this most recent action by the Trump administration threatens that sovereignty. Can you speak to that a little?
Absolutely. is definitely a strong argument there. Again, the language of the statute specifically says that bringing in military force shall be authorized by the governor. So overstepping that chain, which is really the tie to whether forces are needed because they are closest to the site to really be able to evaluate that, is problematic and speaks to the separation of powers issues present with the 10th Amendment, where the courts are very strong in upholding the tenets of federalism. It's a big part of what our country's laws and values are based upon.
Mary David, thank you. I just want to point out it's 45 minutes into the curfew. Oh, pardon me, an hour and 45 minutes into the curfew. And as we look at our live cameras downtown, we can see that police are there. There still are other people filming and recording, and I wish I knew to what degree or what kind of credentials that the police need from the media or from whomever is still there in order to prove that they should be there, that they are allowed to be there. I know that there are some reporters who come downtown and they wear their press credentials on a lanyard. At the same time, I want to point out that the LAPD and the LASD, they started to make the ability to get a press credential a little tougher, a little more strict. You had to really prove what kind of publication you worked for, or in the case of Fox 11, what broadcast you work for, what station rather, and prove it with a letter from the manager, from somebody, a superior, that does indeed validate the fact that you are meant to be in this kind of situation and covering this kind of breaking news. As we're watching, a lot of people walking along, so you see that guy with his phone up, most likely he's streaming, we don't know where, perhaps to the Citizen app. But again, you know, if you're not working for a bona fide organization, I'm surprised that they're not. I mean, perhaps if they're moving, they're going past the Marukai in that plaza there. But it's just an interesting time period for sure. What are the impressions you've gotten? Have you been down there at all? I don't know why you would, but you've, I'm sure, watched the coverage to see all these people and the way they're being pushed out of Little Tokyo in this case and downtown LA in general.
I haven't been there in person, but the footage is very compelling, and it does present other questions when there are these limitations on press as well that speak to First Amendment issues, because there is freedom of the press under the Constitution. And so, again, the restrictions on that do raise questions.
Well, again, the credentialed media are allowed to be in the curfew zone. One could argue that there's also the right to free speech and the right to protest. So where does the ability of local governments and police, what is the statute that allows them to set a curfew?
That goes back to the nature of harm and the threat of violence. So there are certain circumstances where that is allowed, and here where things have escalated at night, that does fall within their purview in a situation of massive groups of populations that are meeting and where properties might be destroyed, and there has been some destruction in the area. But that line of who is allowed access as press or in order to freely assemble, that is a question in the other time frames that are raised, and also in how broadly this could extend and what the possibilities are for saying this is too much and protesters just have to leave altogether.
Well, again, I think the line in the sand was the 23 businesses in the downtown area that were looted, damaged, and had all kinds of losses due to these bad actors, due to the agitators, what have you. I don't know how you want to describe them. Meantime, we continue to watch the live cameras that are showing more people that are being assessed by police, being detained, put into those flexi cuff, zip tie kind of handcuffs, and also seeing a lot of people who are leaving. There was a parking lot because of course we are a car culture, so most people who wound up, I don't know about most, but a lot of the people who wound up in the downtown area for these demonstrations, they found a parking lot, they parked their cars, now they get to the cars and it's time to leave. So it is suggestive that we're watching somebody now who's tagging that building in the upper left corner there of the larger screen. He was tagging whatever that building was. He was caught in the act on our camera, tagging a window. And that is the heartbreaking part of watching this kind of live coverage. When you see someone being destructive, that's the kind of thing that so many people, including those who are demonstrating against the ICE raid, saying, peaceful protest. We do not want to be among those that are destructive or looting. And it plays into the narrative that the Trump administration has been putting out. So it was a very quick moment there, but I did see that he was tagging that building. So much is happening tonight on this 5th night of the ICE protests, and it is now coming on to 2 hours into the curfew. The curfew seems to be effective, but as you see there, as they're walking through, that's part of the Weller Plaza near Marukai. And as you see them, there still are people there, so they haven't 100% been able to clear out Little Tokyo, downtown Los Angeles. People there are moving, so that's the good news. But in terms of actually enforcing a curfew 100% with 100% effectiveness, there are still people who are meandering around and shouldn't be there. And as Gina Silva pointed out, there are regular announcements telling people it's been almost 2 hours since the curfew went into effect. You need to get out. So at what point do police go from please move, please leave, to okay, stand right there, I'm going to now cuff you? We're not quite sure. It could be something as simple as being a little too close to the federal building and not moving close enough or fast enough. Okay, we see in the upper left corner a whole line of police officers now jogging somewhere, perhaps to take on another group of the protesters who refuse to leave the downtown LA area, or it could be as simple as they got word of an area that is either a hot spot or a difficult spot, so they want to make sure that they get to. And it's just interesting to see that there are still people right there on that corner. I believe that could be the corner where Gina was, across from her, where they're just standing there and they're not abiding by the rules of the curfew. They're not supposed to be there, and the only exceptions were those who are experiencing homelessness, those who perhaps work in the downtown area, and credentialed members of the media. But that little group there, they're just standing right there on the corner. Again, are you familiar with signs and symbols? Because it means something when somebody is displaying an upside down American flag. Typically it's anarchists. Okay, so we are watching 3 different views of what happened with the curfew and how the curfew went into effect at 8 o'clock and how people are responding. They are responding, the ones that are stragglers, they're responding slowly. I think you can say that. So at this point, I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out where we need to go. Where you want me to go, Jay, producer Jay. Okay, you might need to move the prompter because I'm not quite sure. All right, so at this point, we are looking at these 4 different views of what is going on in downtown Los Angeles. Again, the larger picture has a group. They're clearly designating themselves as anti-ICE protesters. Now, I haven't seen them do anything destructive, but they are not following the rules of the curfew. They are not following the curfew orders. So eventually, police will not tolerate it, and take care of them, move them out. I'm actually surprised that they've been allowed to stay there on that corner a little longer than I expected. Also in front of the federal building, so that would be the upper left corner there. A lot of police officers, far fewer people. It seems as if no more people. In fact, that white police van that was there is now gone. There were a number of detainees that were loaded up into that van. And then Skyfox over a broader or a part of downtown LA from the sky. And what that is showing is the fact that we're not really seeing a lot of people anymore around. Oh, there we go. There we have some people, and there we see some people on the move. Some of them moving fast, some of them running, which also suggests that perhaps the police are getting more serious about making sure they get out of the curfew zone. That is probably the biggest group of people we've seen in a while. Again, overhead, thanks to Skyfox, looking at these people. They are on the move. I'm not seeing exactly where police and where the skirmish line might be, but we do know that they are there. There is a lot of police presence, and people know now that there is a curfew in effect until 6 a.m. Thank you so much for joining LA Live News tonight. Right now, Fox 11 News coming up at 10 o'clock with Christine Devine and Alex Michelson. They will continue our coverage as the curfew, the first curfew of this anti-ICE protest, is in effect as of now. I'm Susan Hirasuna. Thank you so much. We will keep an eye on the situation in downtown Los Angeles. I timed that wrong.
for toilet paper in the Civil War? I wonder what toilet paper was like in the 1860s. Did they carry it in rolls in their duffel bags?
Everything with you comes down to toilet paper. What? That's always the first question with you. Why is that always your focus?
All right, then what did they do?
I don't know. Maybe they gave out big loose clumps to all the soldiers.
Well, I think it would be nice if there was some sort of historical record of it.
Maybe they should have a toilet paper museum. Would you like that? So we could see all the toilet paper advancements down through the ages. Toilet paper during the Crusades, the development of the perforation, the first six-pack.
Excuse me, Jerry? I'm Stu Chermak. I'm from NBC. Could we speak?
Now, this is the Fox 11 News at 10.
I wanted to let the city know that I have declared a local emergency and issued a curfew for downtown Los Angeles.
So that curfew in downtown LA in place right now as the city is trying to get control over protesters that have been looting and vandalizing property.
Utter anguish right there from those truly affected by the ongoing ICE raids as families are separated. We'll show you the human toll.
I feel that right now is the most important time to have unity and to have love.
A prayer vigil and a call for peace amid all the ICE raids and the protests. Good evening. Welcome to Fox 11 News at 10 o'clock. I'm Ellis Michelson.
And I'm Christine Devine. Curfew is now in effect tonight in downtown LA.
You're looking at this live picture right now from downtown LA. Apparently, these people are not abiding by that curfew, which started 2 hours ago, as city leaders are trying to avoid a repeat of last night's destruction and looting, which we watched happen live right here at 10 o'clock. Tonight, we've got live team coverage. Reporters on the streets. Ed Lascos is in Santa Ana, where there have been protests in OC. But let's begin with Fox 11's Laura Diaz. And Laura, a much different picture behind you than what we saw at this time last night.
Absolutely. Things are much quieter. As you just mentioned, we're 2 hours into the curfew. We're here in front of the detention center. We ended up here because we were following that group who were at the prayer vigil. They made the trek over here, and then once we got here, we ended up behind police lines. We couldn't get out, and that's because authorities, once that 8 o'clock hour hit, if you did not have proper ID that you were a member of the media, then you were detained, you were handcuffed, and really it was just about 15-20 minutes ago when we saw them taken away in a bus, presumably to be booked. But earlier today, we were at that vigil that you just mentioned earlier, Alex, and it was a beautiful mood there. Let's listen to what people had to say.
Well, it's important because my parents were immigrants. They were able to fix and everything, but I know it's such a big part of our community, you know, that we need hardworking people and stuff like that, and we understand that it's not always going to be the actual citizens, so it hurts.
In times like this, our faith is tested. What do you say to yourself and to your believers?
Yeah, well, I think this is a good example of there's joy, there's singing, there's call to aspiration. It's not enough just to point things out.
That was Father Greg Boyle of Homeboy Industries. He was one of the interfaith leaders participating in the vigil at Grand Park today. Now, Mayor Karen Bass also speaking to that crowd. Hundreds of people gathered at the park. We saw people from all over the city gathered in solidarity. It was a diverse group. They were calling for the end to immigration raids and to the protection of immigrant families. After the prayer vigil, they walked from Gloria Molina Park to the detention center, and that is where we are now. And then we found ourselves in a different part of the story as the people who did not leave. I want to point out, though, the people who were at that vigil, they all left peacefully. They went on their way. But others, and my cameraman and I both thought we recognized some of them from last night who were involved in breaking the law. We watched the looting and the destruction that took place, which no one is condoning. If you broke the law, you're going to pay the price for that. But the earlier entire vigil was quite lovely, and people said that they felt so great to be together and to be able to express themselves and to gather as neighbors and sort of support each other through a difficult time. They also said that they wanted to see the world, as you look at the pictures that go out about Southern California, specifically the city of LA, they want the people who don't live here to know what a great place it is to live and that we are good people and we are good neighbors. But moments ago, not that long ago, we saw as people were led away in those buses, they chose not to keep the curfew and they were taken away by the LAPD, presumably to be booked. And as they were taking off, we heard them say, "Si se puede," which was the slogan, the chant by Cesar Chavez, the immigrants' rights leader, who was saying, yes, you can. So some people think they're breaking the law. They think they're breaking the law for a good reason. That's for other people to determine whether that was a wise decision or not. I'm Laura Diaz reporting live from downtown LA, sending it back to the studio.
So, Laura, just to be clear, what you're talking about are people who are intentionally breaking the curfew as a protest, who want to be arrested, saying "Si se puede," Dolores Huertas, Cesar Chavez, all that. Not necessarily the people we talked about last night, the anarchist types who were destroying stuff and the cops arresting them.
From our vantage point, Alex, and I can only speak to that, it appeared to be because they were standing over there, as were we, and we were pushed back. We were already behind police lines, so we didn't have to show media credentials again. But people who were on the other side of it, they had to show them. And if they didn't have them, they either had to leave or they were going to be arrested. So we watched that process, and it took a long time. It took hours.
Yeah.
And then eventually the bus came, and they were transported. But they said it defiantly as they left. So yes, I think they stood in solidarity, and I think that they felt it was a moment and they wanted to be part of it.
Law enforcement will arrest individuals who break the curfew, and you will be prosecuted.
The curfew is necessary, a necessary measure to protect lives and safeguard property.
A curfew in effect, as you're hearing, in downtown LA. This was the announcement that happened in our 5 o'clock newscast that is until 6 in the morning in response to the ongoing anti-ICE protests. Mayor Karen Bass and LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell making that announcement. It was earlier this evening. A Marine battalion is in Los Angeles but is not yet engaged near protests. The 700 Marines were sent from the 29 Palms area to aid some 1,700 National Guard already on the ground, but 4,000 are being deployed statewide. Governor Newsom filed an emergency request in federal court to block the Trump administration and use of the National Guard and Marines. A federal judge has denied that.
But he's had a hearing on that scheduled for Thursday. Meanwhile, the Pentagon is revealing the cost of all this. The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, says the deployment of Marines and the Guard will cost at least $134 million. Mayor Bass has called for an end to the ICE raids, but not the plan, according to Hegseth, who says immigration enforcement could last for 60 days and could escalate further. The president suggesting he's open to invoking the Insurrection Act, which would give him even more power and allow the Marines to essentially serve as police. Today, he used some heated rhetoric in a speech at Fort Bragg, calling LA protesters animals and a foreign enemy. On Monday, so-called peaceful protests once again erupted in violence, with more vandalism, violence, and 96 arrests, according to the LAPD. We've got more reaction tonight to ongoing ICE raids, protests, and now the military moving in, including some Orange County leaders who are opposed to President Trump's order. And they've got a message to local and federal law enforcement. Let's go live to Fox 11's Ed Lascos in Santa Ana with the latest on all this. Ed.
And their message here from a lot of the county supervisors is the same that we've been hearing up in LA County from leaders there, telling the feds to get the military out of Santa Ana and to stop the raids. And a much different scene playing out here with the protests. It's really a driving protest, if you will, as compared to a walking protest, the scene that we saw here just 24 hours ago. Joe will get you into the story. We'll show you what we're talking about, the booms of the fireworks, illegal fireworks. Looking up there at the intersection, this is Bristol as the cars come toward us. The cross is Edinger, main section here in the heart of Santa Ana. When I say about a driving protest, the folks have just been driving in their cars around the loop here, around the block, and they're blowing their horns, and they're in a way celebrating, it almost looks like. And then you have the fireworks up there on the intersection as police are letting everybody continue to do this, because at this point it's remaining peaceful. To the video we go. Check it out. This is the scene the last hour here. Vehicles going by, they have their flags out, their signs condemning ICE, they're blowing their horns. And then at that intersection, Bristol and Edinger, oh, you've got a display of fireworks, an impressive display of fireworks, but an illegal display of fireworks, certainly, as you know. But they're blasting fireworks there, and it's almost a scene reminiscent, if you will, reminded me of last fall when the Dodgers pulled off that incredible victory, won the World Series. Remember, we had all the celebrating folks then with their Dodger flags, uniforms, and blowing their horns and driving the cars. And that's what this looks like here, almost a celebration, if you will, a far cry from the violence and the confrontation that exploded with police just a night ago. To that video, have a look at this. Remember, investigators looking to continue with possible more arrests. We know that there was vandalism, there was some looting after a stare down and a face down with the protesters, a couple hundred of them, and a line of Santa Ana police and other law enforcement over there at the Civic Center Plaza by the Federal Building, the Immigration Center. They were involving fireworks being thrown at law enforcement firing tear gas, pepper spray, rubber bullets. A wild scene there that led to chaos. That's something that investigators say, and the lawmakers down here said we did not want a repeat of tonight. Over at the Convention Plaza, I can tell you at the Civic Plaza, there was a line of National Guard there blocking, making sure that nobody infringes on that federal building and also the Reagan Federal Courthouse. That was the plan, and that's pretty much been exactly how it's turned out so far. No problems at all. And as we come back out live, the scene here continues to play out there. Police letting everybody continue the drive by here. Here comes some more cars going by real fast. That's something one of the officers said. We're concerned about this, that the folks are speeding as they come through here. And in any event, this is the scene that continues to play out here. More fireworks, and at this point, it continues to be successful. And I think we're going to throw it back to the station, because we've got something going on that you were talking about.
Here in that lower box on your screen, there's some kind of police activity. We're told an officer has been injured. Now, this is in the downtown LA area. We're not sure what happened there, but those two black vehicles, we're told, were transporting an officer to the hospital. We followed those vehicles to the hospital. Again, not sure what happened. Of course, we've been talking about the curfew in downtown LA. Yeah. And we know people are not always abiding by that. There have been several arrests tonight. We've seen people out there still on the streets as they're trying to enforce this curfew. But again, word of an officer being injured in the downtown LA area.
Yeah, hopefully we can take that picture full, or maybe they're about to move on from it. Don't have the specifics in terms of that officer. We have seen there are some people in the streets of Los Angeles. So we're looking at two pictures right now. The big picture is from Santa Ana. The bottom right corner is from downtown Los Angeles. Obviously, we just lost that picture. And Christine, why don't you take it away?
So we also want to talk about what's happening while all of these demonstrations are still going on. ICE is still conducting raids in various parts of Southern California, this time in Culver City. Fox 11's Gina Silva spoke to people who are very emotional, and they were directly affected.
7-year-old Jorge Vasquez cried uncontrollably as he watched ICE agents take his father away in handcuffs. His 15-year-old brother Brian yelled, "I'll see you soon, Dad. I promise."
I lost all emotion right now because all I feel is sad. I can't live peacefully without my dad.
48-year-old Arturo Vasquez was taken into custody by ICE agents on Sunday, June 8th, around 2:25 p.m. at the Culver City car wash where he was with his family. Over the weekend, several ICE raids targeted car washes. But Arturo didn't work there. He was simply there to wash his car.
It was normal people working their jobs, trying to provide for their own families to have a better life.
Brian admits his father is undocumented. He says when ICE agents showed up at the car wash, his father panicked and tried to leave. But agents stopped him and took him into custody. Witnesses at the car wash were furious.
Doing it to that child like that.
I know, that's sad.
I don't want to go out anymore because I'm afraid that I'm being followed or I will get detained, even though I'm a U.S. citizen. That's why now I carry on my passport and my ID.
Arturo Vasquez was the family's breadwinner. In the wake of his arrest, friends have set up a GoFundMe account to help support his wife and children.
All I want right now is my dad here home.
That was Gina Silva reporting. As you saw in her story there, she had a fund page that was posted there. Anyone looking to help that family, we have a link on our website.
There is some other news tonight. A brush fire in Burbank forced evacuations earlier today. Good news tonight is it is under control. Skyfox was over the scene earlier today. This is Bethany Fire. It's near the Devil Golf Course. Began this afternoon. Fire crews stopped the spread by 6 o'clock tonight. All evacuation orders along Walnut Avenue have now been lifted. Thankfully, no injuries, no major damage. Crews will continue to monitor and clean up the area overnight. No doubt they were helped by the weather forecast today.
Let's talk about the weather now. Adam Kruger brings us up to date on that.
Yeah, and we'll start with the winds. We're actually going to talk about another fire which is not under control right now. It's near Apple Valley. It's at about 4,200 acres. It's grown quite a bit in the last several hours. So we start with the wide view, the current winds, and yes, the winds were on the light side around Burbank. That helped out with that fire you were talking about. We'll come in closer here to what's known as the Ranch Fire, 4,205 acres. It was about 300 acres earlier this afternoon around 4 o'clock. So it's certainly grown quite a bit. Wind fueled earlier. Winds right now are blowing to the north around Victorville at about 7 miles per hour, which is light. Earlier, those winds were sustained around 30 miles per hour. Here's what it looks like on the map. You can see the yellow spot is the fire footprint. On the left side of your screen, you see Hesperia, Victorville, Apple Valley up towards the top. So it's kind of in that general area. Coming in a little closer, we've got evacuation orders in places like Fisbin Heights, and this broad kind of pink square is where an evacuation order is right now. So we'll continue to watch that. And if you're kind of concerned about the winds tomorrow, they are going to ramp up once again in the high desert. It will turn breezy late in the day tomorrow with those gusts getting back up over 20 miles per hour in that general area. So that'll be something to watch on the fire side of things. Not like we have fire weather conditions overall, though. It's not like it's super windy or really dry or anything like that. All right, now temperatures overnight tonight will drop down to low 60s to near 60 degrees in most spots, and then highs tomorrow, like today, will be warmer. You may have noticed we had that warm up today. I think we'll get just a bit over 80 for LA. Closer to the coast, a little cooler in the 70s, and farther inland it will be warmer. Valleys 80s to near 90, maybe 93 around Santa Clarita. Inland Empire will be seeing some 90s and a few 80s tomorrow, and the deserts will be hot with temperatures there in the 100s. And this warm pattern looks like it's going to last through the week, and then I think we see another uptick in the temperatures for the upcoming weekend. We'll have more on that on our 7-day forecast coming up a little later. For now, let's go back to you.
You guys. A judge denies. Actually, we're going to have this story here. Our immigration protest continues.
Yeah, caught on camera. Downtown LA restaurant looted by protesters. So what happened to them? That's coming up next.
Support for the protest and the immigration raids pretty much split along party lines. We hear from both sides when we come back. Tonight, looters right here hitting a sushi restaurant during the anti-ICE protests and more last night in downtown LA. New video right here showing people breaking into Utoro Sushi in Little Tokyo. They stole the cash register. Police say over 100 arrests were made, though, including 96 for failing to disperse and 14 for looting. No injuries, though, reported during the looting, but this is video of on the ground there as that was happening.
Amazingly, the sushi restaurant owners had nothing to do with creating ICE policy for the United States, and yet somehow this store was targeted. All right, earlier tonight we were joined by Steve Hilton, who is hoping to succeed Gavin Newsom as governor of California. He's a Republican. Here's what he had to say about the ICE raids and the protests that followed.
The thing that I don't understand, and many people watching these scenes unfold don't understand, is why has it taken so long to get a grip of the situation, to get control? This should have been done right at the beginning. We know from these kinds of events all over the world, all the time, that unless you get control of it early on, they escalate and spiral out of control, causing immense damage and destruction and the violence and these chaotic scenes that send such a terrible image of our city and our state to the world.
We were also joined by Democratic Assemblyman Isaac Bryan, who represents the 55th district that covers most of South LA. Here's his reaction to today's event.
We've definitely seen this work in the past, and I would liken this to the map that we saw, right? 99% of the people who are out on the streets are protesting peacefully. There's a small fraction that are dictating the narrative of the whole, but I refuse to let them define the movement that's happening. I've seen beautiful joy and solidarity and celebration and protest in these streets, and it's what makes LA beautiful.
Tonight, authorities have been working to enforce that curfew, which started a little over 2 hours ago. It seems like so far it's mostly working. Things are a lot better than they were last night. Interesting to hear both different perspectives. And it's also been interesting, Christine, to see that I think both parties think that they're getting something out of this politically as well.
Well, there is the whole political nature of all of this that's happening, and obviously some very heated emotions on both sides and passionate arguments on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, this is an issue that drives people to vote one way or another, and we're seeing that this week.
Our coverage of the immigration protests, the riot, continue. We'll go back to Orange County when we come back. At Orange County and another anti-ICE hotspot, Santa Ana.
Fox 11's Christina Gonzalez was there as tensions flared.
And there were protests all over Santa Ana. Stepping out of the way, this one at Bristol and McFadden, rather large, very peaceful, at least as far as we were here. Another one also downtown, opposing sides going at each other in front of businesses trying to stay open.
USA! USA! USA!
Did you ever imagine, algún día se imaginó que iba a tener el National Guard in front of you?
Never. This is the first.
The American people are waking up!
Came to get some lunch and
You couldn't?
Couldn't, no.
We are going to establish law and order.
Is it changing how you do things to see all the images of, like you were trying to come here for lunch, but...
Right. Yeah, it does. It does.
In what way?
It does only because I feel like it's, you can't go to your local places.
The United States of America!
We have employees that, need to feed their families. We have a lot of people that come here to get paid to feed their families. And, if we're to close, if we are 1, 2, or 3 days, it's a huge impact for the employees that we have here, so.
Aside from the protests going on in front of you, are you also finding employees afraid to come to work because of the raid?
You know what? It's intense. It's not just here in Perla, but just in downtown in general. Whether you are legal or not legal, I think even the people who are legal are afraid to come out. I don't think it's a matter of a document. It's just, you see police, you see, the Marines out here, you see police, and you just don't want to be outside.
It's so frustrating and it's so unbelievable that I don't even have the words for it. It's just so...
Still trying to process this.
Honestly, yeah, because I know from here, this is just the beginning. I know things are going to happen from here. This is only the beginning.
Back here at McFadden, the owner of this parking lot and these businesses, which remained open during this whole thing, asking people to leave or saying they would be towed away by 7 p.m. In Santa Ana, I'm Christina Gonzalez, Fox 11 News.
I'm Laura Diaz in downtown Los Angeles, where a prayer vigil was held calling for an end to the ICE raids. That story is coming up.
We've shifted back into a warmer weather pattern now. That's going to last through the week, and I think temperatures go up even more just in time for our upcoming weekend. I've got your forecast coming up.
watching the Fox 11 News at 10.
We continue to follow breaking news. Some people are defying a curfew order in downtown LA and demonstrating in the streets, though most people do seem to be abiding by it, and we see a very different scene than what we saw last night when we joined you here at 10:30.
Our team coverage continues tonight. Fox 11's Ed Lascos is in Orange County. We want to check back in first with Laura Diaz in downtown LA. Laura.
Yes, Christine, as you can see behind me, things are very quiet now at Molina Park. That's, of course, because of the curfew. People are abiding by it. But earlier today, we gathered along with hundreds of other people. They came to pray for an end to the violence and an end to the ICE raids.
Well, it's important because my parents were immigrants. They were able to fix and everything, but I know it's such a big part of our community, you know, that we need hardworking people and stuff like that, and we understand that it's not always going to be the actual citizens, so it hurts.
In times like this, our faith is tested. What do you say to yourself and to your believers?
Yeah, well, I think this is a good example of there's joy, there's singing, there's call to aspiration. It's not enough just to point things out.
That was Father Greg Boyle of Homeboy Industries. He was one of the interfaith leaders participating in the vigil at Grant Park. Now, Mayor Karen Bass also spoke to the crowd. Hundreds of people gathered today at the park. We saw people from all over the city. They gathered in solidarity. It was a diverse group. They were calling for the end to immigration raids and for the protection of immigrant families. After the prayer vigil, they walked from the park to the detention center, and that's where we ended up, and we ended up behind police lines there. We watched as the LAPD carefully went up to people and asked them if they had proper ID, were they members of the media? If not, it was time to disperse. It was 8 o'clock. They had to go. People who elected to stay there, they defied the law, they defied the curfew, and eventually they were handcuffed, they were put into a bus, and presumably they were taken to jail. So that was the scene there. We're now back to this quiet scene here at the park where people gathered, and they gathered to say, we are a proud city. We don't like the pictures that are going out about LA and the vision of what people are seeing around the world. So that was the story here earlier today. I'm Laura Diaz reporting live from downtown, sending it back to the studio.
Backdrop there, City Hall. All right, we take a picture live now, right now, downtown. Well, unfortunately, we're seeing
this is near the Jewelry Mart, and it looked like there was quite a lineup of law enforcement in place there. You think about, Christine, what we were looking at almost 24 hours ago. We had images of people in the streets setting fires, setting car fires. We saw people taking hammers to the sidewalk to create rocks that they could throw at law enforcement. We don't see anything like that tonight. And look at the show of force that we see happening in real time. All those cop cars out and law enforcement out in a big way. And it seems like, you know, they've sent the message tonight, Christine, we're done with this.
Well, noticing the sign there, the Jewelry Mart. This is the area where there's the Fashion District and the Jewelry Mart. A lot of jewelry stores down there. One of them was looted yesterday. You have that police presence there. And LAPD talked about the businesses that were damaged. And perhaps this is part of why there's such a show of force there. And they were very serious about making those arrests. We saw earlier tonight where you had people in those zip ties, that white LAPD bus where they were transporting people. They were very clear about making those arrests when that curfew kicked in, giving people plenty of time to get out of the area, to move if you didn't live there or work there or have reason to be there. So there you see what's happening tonight in downtown LA.
It's important for people to see that image, an image of safety and control restored in Los Angeles.
We do have more reaction to the ongoing ICE raids, the protests, and now the military moving into Southern California. Some Orange County leaders that are opposed to the president's order to send in more National Guard troops. We go live to Fox 11's Ed Lascos with that in Santa Ana. Ed.
And Christine, you're right. You have local officials here, county supervisors opposed to that, and certainly the protesters. And I'll tell you, in the last 20 minutes or so, the protesters on the move here through the streets of Santa Monica. Joe will give you a look. That's the intersection. Bristol is the street coming toward us. The cross up there at the light is Edinger. And for most of the night, the protesters have been circling in their vehicles there, moving around, setting off fireworks. And now, in the last 20 minutes, less than a half hour ago, they started to move. Let's go to that video, have a look as the protesters, hundreds of them, many of them in their vehicles, driving along Bristol very slowly, blowing their horns. They have their flags out, they have their signs out, all condemning ICE, and you have many others walking along with them, blowing their horns, setting off fireworks as they go along the way. A slow march as they chanted and moved very slowly down Bristol. They're heading over to the Civic Center Plaza. Yeah, that's the spot where they were last night in that big confrontation with police, the showdown with police, because that's the area where the federal buildings are, the federal courthouse, the Reagan courthouse, also the immigration center. And that, we can tell you, is being guarded right now, as it's been all along, by guardsmen and also a strong contingent of the Santa Ana police. We were there a little while ago. So they are in position. They're waiting for this long convoy, if you will, the line of protesters to reach that location. We'll see how it plays out there. But as the protesters move past our location here on Bristow off Edinger, very peaceful, moving along, chanting as you're taking a live look now. Some more of the cars, the stragglers, they're saying they're trying to catch up to the big group that just went by here. But everybody heading over to the Civic Center Plaza. We'll certainly see how that plays out. But again, here tonight, it has been very calm, very peaceful. But as one of the officers went by and he looked at his watch, he said, the night is still young. For now, we're live Santa Ana. Back to the west side we go.
All right, thank you. LA Times columnist Gustavo Arellano is an OC resident. He was at last night's protest in Santa Ana. He joined us live tonight at 6.
What you saw there, 99% positivity. You had all these people wearing T-shirts of iconic Santana Chicano brands, Suavecito, Gunther's. It really was a party. But the interesting thing that I saw, I talked to a lot of people. They said this was their first ever protest and that they had no issue with Trump deporting violent criminals, but what is happening right now is not it. And that's what people really got upset.
Gustavo also says there are smarter ways to rebel. Throwing chunks of concrete at cop cars isn't the way to do it. You can read more about his experience at that protest in the LA Times.
All right, lots of people thinking about the weather as they go about their business in other parts of the
reminder that 99% of people are not impacted by this right in front of their faces.
Exactly, and it warmed up today, and it was the warmest day since the first day of the month, and we're going to kind of ride that train now for a while for the rest of this week with those warmer temperatures, and then it goes up a little more for the weekend. So let's get right into it. We'll start with this view, I believe a time lapse, well obviously not live, from probably Mount Wilson. They haven't told me, but I'm assuming that's the shot right there for today. And again, just sunny with a little bit of haze, and I wonder if we're actually getting a little smoke in view here, as there were a couple of fires that popped up earlier today. Either way, though, again, temperatures warmer, a lot of 80s and even a few 90s farther inland. We're going to see that pattern continue. That's headline number 2. Headline number 1, though, is the fact that these mornings will continue with cloud cover for a lot of us. The June gloom, we're going to see that last for at least the next week, the foreseeable future, essentially, where the clouds come in at night, morning, and then eventually go away for most areas. Maybe some of the beaches, not quite the case. Again, we'll be warm all week. We do get a little warmer for the weekend ahead. Here's a look at our temperatures right now. We've got 60s for most locations. At this time, though, it's 96 degrees out at Palm Springs. Very warm there, where their low will be at about 78 in the morning. Most spots, though, you see the low temperatures are right around 60 degrees. And then again, the clouds come in also in the morning. That's what 7 a.m. looks like. Mixed within these clouds, some patchy fog, might even be a little bit of drizzle, which is why you see a couple of little green splotches here and there. Clouds will go away later in the day, mostly sunny for most areas, maybe a few clouds hanging out near the coast or even over some of the beaches at some point in the afternoon, which would obviously make a big range in temperatures, which is exactly what we saw today. Some spots right along the coast, highs today were only in the 60s. Inland, we had 80s and 90s. Tomorrow is going to be very similar temperature-wise. Let's just say on average 70 for the coast. LA probably just over 80 degrees. The Inland Empire, we see a mix of 80s and 90s. In the valleys, I think we'll see a mix of 80s and 90s as well. And again, more 100s in the desert like we saw today. Moving ahead to the weekend for LA, it is going to get a little warmer. Probably partly cloudy on Saturday, 83, mostly sunny Sunday, 85. And again, areas that are farther inland will be even warmer than that. And it's because of high pressure. This is our new weather pattern that we're kind of locked into for a while. Now notice as we go into Friday, this high nudges down a little. This low tries to kind of head head towards us. It's like a power struggle here. So our temperatures actually back off a few degrees Friday, and then this high kind of builds back in as we go into the weekend, which is why the temps will come back up a little for our upcoming weekend. The bigger range in temperatures, though, will be inland areas, not so much on the coast. We're kind of just holding low and mid-70s for a while for the coast. Again, we talked about the clouds coming in pretty much every single morning. For L.A. and inland Orange County, it's around 80, low 80s, then mid-80s by the weekend. Valleys and Inland Empire will be even warmer. Mountains, pretty warm temperatures there as well, 80 degrees or so for the next few days. The high desert will be well into the 90s. And in the low desert, hot stuff there with temperatures headed up to about 110 by Father's Day on Sunday. We'll go back to you.
Adam, thanks. Justin Baldoni versus Blake Lively. A judge giving a big win to Lively, but it isn't over yet. Talk with Justin Baldoni's lawyer coming up after Kyle Kraska and sports.
Alex, thanks very much. Very nice to be back with all of you. Coming up in sports, Dodgers duking it out with the Padres, but San Diego not about to let the Blue Crew take the first 2 games at Petco Park. We've got some lowlights, unfortunately, just ahead. Plus, Davante Adams says that joining the Rams is a bit of a culture shock in a good way. And the Chargers' Jim Harbaugh shares an update on his health. We will share that with you right after the break. But first, as always, we've got your poll question of the night. And we're asking you this tonight: which injured Dodger pitcher will be the most impactful when he returns? Is it Tyler Glasnow, Tony Gonsolin, Shohei Ohtani, obviously playing but working his way back, trying to get into the rotation, hopefully soon? Roki Sasaki or Blake Snell? You can pick one of the 5. Weighing in right now at foxla.com/vote. We'll give you the results right after this.
Fox 11 Sports Desk, sponsored by Spectrum. A connection built for everywhere. That's life unlimited. That's Spectrum.
The first Dodgers-Padres matchup of the entire season lived up to the hype last night in a rematch of last year's NLDS. It was a back-and-forth affair with the Blue Crew coming away with a win in extra innings. Tonight, these two rivals back at it in San Diego for the second of 7 games between them in an 11-day span. The boys going with a bullpen game with Matt Sauer getting the bulk of the work. Padres with a man on, 2 out in the third. Luis Arraez pulls the Sauer cutter to right. Fernando Tatis Jr. hustles all the way around from first. And he will beat the throw to the plate to give San Diego a 1-0 lead. Then, after an RBI single from Manny Machado, Jackson Merrill keeping the 2-out rally going. Rips that one into the right field corner. Machado scores on the triple from Merrill to put the Padres on top 3-0. Meanwhile, the Dodger offense held in check by Dylan Cease. Pitched 7 shutout innings, struck out 11. He is the first pitcher this season with double-digit punch-outs against the Crew. And the Friars then break it open in the 6th, now 5-zip. Martin Maldonado hammers the hanging cutter from Sauer. It's a solo blast to left. Sauer, who was called up today, ends up with 9 earned runs as a parting gift. Padres crushing the Dodgers 11-1. Series finale tomorrow afternoon. Mercifully, reinforcements could be coming for the Dodgers' injured rotation. Shohei Ohtani threw 44 pitches today during a sim game. Manager Dave Roberts left open the possibility that Ohtani could pitch before the All-Star break. Plus, Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell both threw bullpen sessions. For Snell, it was his first since April, and he said that his throwing shoulder has been pain-free for 2 weeks. So some good news for you. Meanwhile, the Angels going for their 4th win in 5 games, hosting the A's tonight. Scoreless here in the 6th. The A's with a man on. Brent Rooker drives at the center. Joe Adele can't quite make the grab. That is an RBI double, and the A's take a quick 1-0 lead. But the Halos answer in the 8th. On the first pitch of the inning, Travis d'Arnaud drills it to left center for a solo shot. That's his 3rd of the year, and it ties the game at 1. So on we go to extras. Halos, 2 on, 2 out in the 10th. Nolan Schanuel playing the hero, smacking that one to center, and that will do it. The Angels will walk it off against the A's, winning 2-1. Oh, by the way, it's Schanuel's first career walk-off hit. Way to go. Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh says that he is in good health following hip replacement surgery and a cardiac ablation. The latter procedure is meant to help his heart after he experienced atrial flutter during a game last year, causing him to temporarily have to leave the field to get that treated. Today, the team kicked off a mandatory minicamp at their headquarters, the Bolts, in El Segundo. Harbaugh led the Bolts back to the playoffs in his first year at the helm, and now they are looking to take another step forward in year number 2.
Just led to more confidence, from everybody. I mean, I hate to use the word more comfortable because it's just not a word I like to associate with football. But, I see it in a positive way in that everybody knows the battle rhythm. Everybody knows the systems. We were able to, take where we were and build on that.
All right, good to see you back and healthy, Coach. Meanwhile, 3-time All-Pro receiver Devontae Adams already feeling quite at home with the Rams. Adams, who most recently played for the Jets and the Raiders, says it's quite the difference joining a team with a positive winning culture.
I feel like this is what I needed, just based off the vibe and the aura of the building, and everybody's in a good mood. It's not like a dark cloud over the building, and I've experienced that quite a bit over the last few years. So it's a glaring difference when you come into a building like this.
All right, looks good in that big number 17, the most popular number in L.A. Here's the results of our poll now. Which injured pitcher do you think will be the most impactful when he returns? Is it Tyler Glasnow, Tony Gonsolin, Shohei Ohtani? Winning the vote with 50%. Let's hope. Dave Roberts says there's a chance he may return before the All-Star break. All right, thanks for playing along. We'll send it back over to Christine now.
Very good. A birthday gift destroyed. The crime caught on camera. Was the wiener dog guilty? Find out coming up on Good Night LA at 11.
Fox 11 Entertainment is sponsored by Yamava Resort and Casino.
In entertainment, Justin Baldoni's lawyers taking shots at his client's legal nemesis, Blake Lively.
Yeah, Brian Friedman was on TMZ Live with me and Charles Latiboudier. He's reacted to Blake's big legal win on Monday when a judge tossed out Baldoni's defamation claims in a $400 million lawsuit against Blake, her husband Ryan Reynolds, and the New York Times.
We weren't pleased that the judge dismissed the defamation claim, but it didn't, overall, it's not what the case is about. I mean, let's remember where we got started here. We got started because Blake Lively filed a CRD complaint and then, walked over and filed a lawsuit which, accused some very good people of a smear campaign and accused, a terrific young man of sexual harassment, both of which were completely untrue.
Friedman says he hopes Blake continues to move forward with her lawsuit against Justin, so Friedman has the opportunity to depose Blake and help clear Justin's name. That deposition is scheduled for June. By the way, I'll be back as the fill-in host of TMZ Live tomorrow at 4 p.m. right here on Fox 11.
Here are the upcoming shows at Yamava.
All right, we end with something fun. We've been asking people to send us free food. Apparently, these people are sending us free toys, so we're going to do this. How to Train Your Dragon is the live-action remake roaring into movie theaters Friday the 13th. And with the movie comes some pretty cool toys that you can get.
Yeah, so we got a couple things here. One is the, well, let's see. Spin Master sent us some of these official movie toys for us to check out, so let's go through them. So there's the Blast and Roar Toothless Mask, which is this. Looks pretty interesting. I can imagine my kid wearing this.
Yeah.
We have the Titan Red Death figure, which I'm assuming is this guy right here.
Wow, makes it, look at that.
Pretty cool.
And then we've got this is the Ultimate Plasma Blast Toothless figure, which I think we look at this.
There you go.
Okay. How about that? And,
go ahead.
All of them are available now at major retailers.
I was just going to say, my son had a toy very much like this guy right here, Toothless. It was his favorite toy when he was at a certain age. So,
you know,
you're going to do the mask? Go for it.
Well, I've been working since 7 in the morning, so I'm so delirious at this point that I might as well make some bad decisions, like have this thing. What do we think?
I think when the battery's in and you open your mouth, it roars or something. When you open,
yeah,
maybe, or you could just roar yourself.
There we go.
That's quite a look on you there.
Well, yeah. It's been quite.
Is it a fitting end to the day?
It's been a fitting end to the day. So I'll be back tomorrow with more coverage. The news. What's going on here? All right. Good night, LA. Bye-bye.
Welcome to Good Night LA, simulcast on our sister station, Fox 11 Plus. I'm Christine.